Hey guys, I'm Eb, the black nerd that talks about life lessons from the stuff that we love, like video games and anime. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started. Okay. Hero Academia and Naruto, The Tale of Two Dropouts. So this is an episode that I've been looking forward to do for a very long time. These characters mean a lot to me. Specifically, we're talking about Deku, Izuku Midoriya, and Rock Lee from the Naruto series. We might touch a little bit on Naruto himself, but like Naruto is not my favorite character. And for those that don't know, Rock Lee is one of my favorite anime characters of all time. He's had a huge impact on me growing up. In terms of what it means to work hard, to be dedicated, to be diligent, and I have here my co-host.
Yep, Jordan. It's good to be back again, man. It's really good to be back.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your commitment. I appreciate your willingness to, explore these more mainstream anime. I've been waiting to talk about these two shows for a long time. I remember when my homegirl told me to watch Hero Academia, she was just like, I think you'll really like this main character. Something about that reminds me of you and your own values. And when I'm watching it, I'm just like, yo, this guy's literally, if Rock Lee was the main character of his own anime, his relationship with All Might's literally the same thing as Rock Lee and Might Guy. All Might Guy, they both have Might in their names. How did anyone not see that? Like, it's so obvious. They're both screaming and loud, and they're punching and breaking their arms while they punch and trying to help people, and they like wearing green. What?
Yeah, they have an interesting relationship. Who is it? Rock Lee and Guy Sensei. And do you say Guy Sensei or Gay Sensei?
I say Guy because his name is properly Might Guy. But like I say, for those of us who are old school nerds, as you called us, I said old school. You said no old school nerds when we were texting the other day. Old school nerds. We were gonna say Maito Guy because that's all we've seen. That's how it was That's how the fan sub said it. It was just Maito Guy. We didn't know it was actually a little translation of Might Guy.
Yeah, I like the relationship between Rock Lee and I guess Might Guy, as you call it, better than Deku and All Might.
Really?
Because flattery is a form of imitation, right? Mm-hmm. So you can kind of see exactly how Rock Lee really admires his sensei, and everything he does actually reflects. I'm gonna say Guy Sensei. I don't like saying Mike Sensei for some reason.
No one says Guy. No one says Mike Sensei. Everyone calls him Guy Sensei. I mean, that's what Rock Lee calls him.
Yeah, so Guy Sensei, you can kind of see everything he does actually mimics. He wants to make him proud, right? He really wants to make him proud, and you can kind of see the desire to make him proud is very high, in comparison to Deku and All Might. Whereas Deku has this idea of All Might, where it's, yes, I really admire you because of who you are and everything you represents, but the moment I found out, who you were, that you're not really, I mean, you are All Might, but you also have this vulnerable side of you. I don't know anymore, but he still has that respect, right?
I've never seen the opposite, to be honest with you. And I would say like that was a transformative part in their relationship, is the fact that no one's getting arrested for those that are hearing that in the background. I think that was a transformative part in their relationship that I think a lot of people what's what I'm looking for? They underplay. Just the idea of having someone that knows who you are, who knows your alter ego, if you will. I think All Might's the only one that actually has, in a sense, of alter ego. Seeing your alter ego and still looking up to you, that shows the depths in which Deku values All Might, and that's something that like I personally hold dear to my heart. I have a really close relationship with my dad, and so seeing Rock Lee with Guy and seeing Deku with All Might, it really reminds me of my experiences with my dad, and just always wanted to make him proud. Seeing his, I see the faults in him. I see I always wasn't perfect, but he's still someone that built a lot of strong foundations in me that I was able to build off of till this day. And just when you're looking at both their experiences, and you're hearing like All Might and Guy tell their respective students, and um, sons, not sons, if you will, because let's be honest, like they're basically father and son in both shows, to make them proud. That had a big impact on me because that's something that I'm always trying to do for my dad. Not to say that he's never proud of me. I'm constantly seeking his approval, but it's something that I ask myself. I'm like, are you doing your best? Are you doing the things that like he'd be proud of you for doing in terms of just trying to be better with yourself? We may not always agree on things, my dad and I, but it's the idea of making him proud in terms of me making my own decisions, even if it's decisions that he may not agree with. Uh, Watching Hero Academia, the thing that hooked me, despite all the stuff about Deku and All Might, was the quote. And I know you had some stuff to say on it at the beginning of the show. The first, like, what, 4 minutes after Deku Izuku at this point gets beat up, is that he says, "All men are not created equal. This was the reality I learned about society at a young age of 4." Now, that had a personal impact on me that hooked me on the show, even before seeing All Might go crazy on the Nomu and all that stuff. But I wanted to get your perspective on it. I know you had some stuff to say on it.
Yeah. So, how am I going to say this one? Because I feel like I'm just going to run here. But
Okay, just go.
yeah. So of course, I agree with that statement. So not all men are not created equal. Wait, was the statement all men created equal or not
All
equal?
men are not.
So I completely agree with that statement, and I think that one of the most dangerous thing, because I'm doing, for anyone who may not know, I was actually studying political science. More specifically, I was studying public administration and governance, right? So I kind of have a little bit of understanding when it comes to sort of like the sociology aspect in this.
Mhm.
So I think one of the most dangerous thing, politicians or leader can, even over the past, has done is promote this idea that we are equal, right? So it is like, you know what, let's throw away the unfair advantages that people have,
Mhm.
and that might have said, you know what, you may be stronger, you may be more beautiful than other people, but that doesn't matter because we're all equal, right? In theory, this may look like it's just, it's fair, but in reality, it's going to say otherwise, right? Because what's promoted in theory is not often case the reality, and that's what we always see. So for example, do you remember during the pandemic where they were saying reality, because everyone is struggling, let's just give everyone money because now they're staying at home, and this sounded good. Do you remember that?
Of course.
It
Yeah,
sounded good.
what's it called? The stimmy checks, both in Canada and the US. Yeah.
But look what happened in reality, right? Now a lot of people don't want to go back to work, and a lot of people start to realize that, hey, you know what, now that we have to go back to society, why should I work for the next 30, 50 years when I could just do YouTube? Because now they spend so much time indoor. So the whole point I'm trying to say is things can look good in theory, but in reality, that's not the case. And that goes for unfair advantages. Like, of course, if you're smarter, right, you're going to get into doors that others cannot. If you have authority, influence, or whatever, enough resources, you're going to have an
Privileges.
advantage. Yeah, you're going to have an advantage over others. And we all know this is true, but this is something that we do not often think about until it happens to you. So the story was this, and this is what I told Eb about. So this happened to me 2 weeks ago, right? So I was out on a date with this girl. We went to Casa Loma, right? So I decided to, what, let me bring this girl to Casa Loma or something like that.
It's
And
not expensive. I can't remember what Castle Loma is. What is that again?
Casa Loma is like this very antique castle,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just an old castle. It's just like one
Okay,
of those
okay.
historical
Oh yeah,
historical
Toronto's castle. I heard about that.
exciting. Yeah. So they were hosting a haunted house over there. So I decided to bring a girl out to a date on this. So there's two courses to this event, right? So the first course, you do the first course, and after that you take a break, and after that you do a next course. So we had a really good time. We enjoyed ourselves. But then I had a hookup. My one of my good friend uh reserved me for another place called the rec room. So this
I
is where you
know
could just
that.
play, yeah, so you could just play arcade games and whatnot over there. So after we finished that, right? So after we finished the haunted house at Castle Loma, called the Uber. I made myself look good, of course. Leadership. I'm taking I'm
Taking
taking
initiative.
yeah, I'm taking the initiative and all that. So called the Uber. We went there, and then what happened when we arrived at the rec room was that you see a huge crowd, right? And I'm confused. I'm just like, oh, you know what? Like, I could care less about the crowd because I have a reservation, so I'm good. I don't have to wait. And that's exactly what happened at the Casaloma. There was such a long lineup, but because I had a VIP, I didn't have to wait, right? I could just go straight
Mm,
in.
right.
But listen. So this is where it gets really tricky, and this is what I say: having authority, influence, and resources is very important. Because when I got there, they said, "Oh, you can't come in," and I said, "What do you mean I can't come in? Like I have reservation. Like check my phone." And he was like, "Well, this place has been booked." The minute they said that, they said it's been privately booked. The minute they said that, I quickly looked towards the girl and I wanted to make sure that she never heard this because I didn't want her to know that there's level to this game. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like there's level to this game, and I'm with a and I didn't want her to think like subconsciously think that I'm with a guy who isn't there, like who can't call these type of shots, even though it's unrealistic. You see what I'm saying? But people have these sort of fantasies.
Right.
So what happened was I said, no way, but I made a reservation. They said, well, someone privately booked this.
Mm,
So then I had to do like a crazy walk of shame. And in my mind, I'm like, what do I do now? Because we had such a good time and we were at the peak interest. Like she was really feeling me. We were having good conversations. She was telling me how much she liked me. And now I had to do a walk of shame. And I didn't have a third plan because,
mm,
of course, I made a reservation, right?
mm-hmm,
So what happened? I'm just walking. And now I have to fake it. I have to say, I have another plan.
mm-hmm,
But then I really don't, right?
mm-hmm,
And then but then it made me realize that what I was saying, because the moment I got home,
mm-hmm.
after the day ended, whatever, like, it's a long story, but after the day ended, what happened was I go on Instagram, I call my friend, I tell them exactly what happened, and he was like, well, you never heard the news? I said, what news? He was like, the rec room was booked by Drake for his
I knew
little
you were gonna say
son.
Drake. I knew you were gonna. I was like, it
No,
couldn't be
no,
Drake.
no.
It
I'm
couldn't be
telling
Drake.
you, no. But imagine this. It was booked for his son. Of course, he's gonna have his entourage play games or whatever. But it was booked for his son, and in my mind, I was like, there is no way this happened to me. Like, of course, I know that of course, life is unfair, right? It's not fair at all. But the fact that it happened to me, I don't know. I got mad, but then I understood the game. I'm like, damn, I can't do nothing.
You gotta hug the L.
I just have to hug the L and do something. So I've come to realize that, man, yeah, that was my story. It was just so crazy.
Yeah, that's life. And so when I was watching this song, I saw that quote. For me, it reminded me of when I got first diagnosed with my learning disability. I call them learning challenges, so I may use the terms interchangeably. I find disability is very disempowering. I mean, that's the
Okay.
clinical term, right? But I find learning challenges because you're just the way you learn is more challenging than others. And not to say that you can't learn, because disability implies that there's something wrong with you, right?
Okay.
And so when I was assessed, I realized that like I'm not on the same. And I really thought I got assessed. I'm 33 now. I got assessed when I was 21, so like a good 12 years ago. And I remember thinking to myself when first got diagnosed that like I'm not on the same footing as everybody else in terms of school. And I thought back in terms of why school gave me a hard time, and it honestly just made sense as to why I had such a hard time. And that's for me is when I realized like we're not the same. Like I don't learn the same way as everybody else. So how am I the same as it? How am I the same as everybody else if I can't even learn the same way as everybody else?
Yeah.
Right? And that just goes to a lot of other facets and aspects of life. We're not all the same. We're not of the all the same capacity and skill sets as others are. And being assessed with my learning challenge, see how they call it learning challenge instead of learning disability,
Hmm.
um, made me force no, I haven't made me forced me to become acutely aware of my strengths and weaknesses as to how I can work within the system, in this case school, on how I can get by. Because if I go about it the same way as like maybe my sister, who is a lot more gifted than me in terms of school, she's a doctor, who, for those who don't know, um, I'm not going to come out the same way. I think we've covered in other episodes the same quote. The definition of madness is trying to do the same thing over and over and expecting something to change. I got to do things differently in terms of how I do schoolwork. So in those cases, I really focus on doing assignments and papers really well because I'm very good at English. So I really made sure to use my strengths to get me through school. So the in terms of like university, like my exams, I would come out with like a 60%, but my paper would be 80 or 90. So it balanced out to be about like a early 70s mark. You see what I'm saying? And all my assignments, everything would accumulate to balance out the exam point because I wasn't good at exams. So that's the reason why like the show had such a big impact on me. And even also like growing up, I also wasn't naturally athletically gifted either. I was definitely, especially since I was part of the Yu-Gi-Oh club, the guys were playing Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon cards.
No
So
way, you were that type of person.
yeah, I was that kid. I was that kid.
You were those kids.
Yeah, I was the kid who rolled up to school in the Pokemon cards and everything. And so I wasn't athletic. I wasn't good in sports, which we're gonna obviously expand on that. But because of that, it was me and all the other Yu-Gi-Oh Pokemon club lovers club were always the last four to pick for gym class because you don't want these guys, they're gonna make you lose. So you gotta pick the least worst. So it was interchangeably us four who were always the last one picked. And no one ever wants to be the last one picked. I know, like for Deb, I don't know if because she works with children. She actually just picks the team, so no one ever gets picked last. But that was the same thing. That was the thing I dealt with from high school, from elementary school, and a little bit of high school. High school, I started to kind of figure out at least basketball. I could figure out how to do, but for the most part, I'm not athletic.
Oh, that's interesting. In my position, what happened was because I was very good at basketball because I played at a very high competitive level.
Mm-hmm.
I would so funny. First, I would start off picking a very good player, and then I would pick probably the second or worst person
Mm-hmm.
to prove just how good I was and to make it more challenging for myself. So that's what I would do. But the
I
reason
wish
why,
I had those people.
so I wouldn't do it. I'll tell you one thing. I wouldn't do it out of pity. I would do it to challenge myself to make sure that my skills were that good that no matter, of course, I have to have a role player with me, but no matter who was on my team, like
You
I'll
can make
be
it work.
exactly. I can still make it work. But the reason why, personally, I liked Rock Lee a lot because I love this philosophy, right? Like I was able to relate to the feeling of always being doubted
Mm-hmm.
and I guess not included also. But
Mm-hmm.
most importantly, like I liked his tenacity and just his sheer drive to become the best version of himself, right? So, like I said, I used to play basketball, right, on a competitive level,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always wanted to be the best version of myself. So, the fact that he was able to believe in himself the way he did
Mm-hmm.
sort of spoke to me because there's power to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's power to that. I remember, I think it was my little brother who once told me that no matter what you do in life, if you don't have the confidence to do it, it
Mm-hmm.
just looks bad.
Mm-hmm.
It really just looks bad. And especially when you're playing basketball, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a mentality thing. Like of course you need to have the skill sets, but I've seen some of the best player when they lost confidence within themselves, like they looked average.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't believe
Yeah,
when
it's
they
true.
did not believe in themselves that day for that day. I mean, they
Just like when
just
we're talking about Bleach, right? Just the idea of having faith in yourself. Like everything's in the mind. Like a majority of sports or competitiveness is in the mind. It's not so much like obviously training and being adequate in terms of your skills is important. But if you don't have the mindset, actually there's the perfect quote from Guy, right? There's no point of working hard if you don't believe in yourself.
I mean, I agree. I agree. And you know what? Like I see it like this too. It doesn't look good. It just looks ugly. Can you imagine, let's say for example, you're trying to be a leader, You're trying to be a counselor, a camp counselor, whatever. You're trying to be a leader, and you just don't have confidence. It just looks weird.
Yeah,
That's the way. That's the way I see it. Like, it just looks weird. Imagine trying to play video games, even video games, right? And you just don't
hmm
have confidence, and you're just like, oh, you just shake.
hmm
It just looks weird. Anything you do without confidence, to me personally, it just looks weird.
yeah, and building your skills also helps you. I don't really like the fresh and fit guys, but they have like a really good quote. It was competence breeds confidence. I agree with that. Like the more you become competent, you work, and being competent in something is not just doing something, but practicing and dedicating yourself to something. It just
Yeah.
helps you build a sense of confidence, and then that bleeds into your competence. Like it creates a very cyclical effect, and it creates more opportunities for yourself.
I think that's a. I'm gonna say something to that. I think that's an add-on. I think the competence part. I think before competency, I think a belief system needs to follow before that. I because remember, let's look at Deku for example. He was not competent at all.
Except in school, yeah, like literally classes. That was about it.
Yeah.
And
In
otherwise,
terms
like,
of wanting to be a hero, like he was not competent at all. He was not fit
mhm,
to be a hero. But the fact
yep,
that he had this unrealistic expectation of himself, that he believed that he could be a hero. So
mhm.
because he had that, he was ready to accept to be a hero. So the day when he did become a hero, everything just fell into place because he had that belief system. And then along the way, he just became more competent at it. And it was easy for him to become competent at it because he had that belief system.
That's a great point. That's actually a really good point. And I was thinking about that too, just watching Deco and even Rock Lee too, just the amount of times that they get shut down, right?
Yeah.
By the world, just telling that they can't do it. But they'd still, even though it took, and we're gonna expand on that, but it took, just that one person. And I just want to remind people that it just takes just one person for both of them, as much as like they eventually built themselves to who they are. And in terms of like you haven't seen where Deco is, and a mild spoiler for Naruto, but like Rock Lee becomes one of the strongest characters in the series. But
Thank you.
for
Thank you for the spoiler.
I won't go into detail. You see it for yourself. But I say
Uh,
that in the sense of because I know you're still building yourself up in terms of Naruto. So you're just I'm not even going to tell you anything that happens in terms of this series and where that goes. But um, for them to get to that point where they are, they just required one person like you can do it, and you can see how for both of them in terms of you know Guy telling Rockley he's a genius of hard work, and All Might telling Deku that he can become a hero. You saw they both broke down. They're just like, that's all I was asking for. I just needed validation for everything I was doing. I wanted to know that there's actually a purpose and point to what I'm doing. I kept doing it. I was going to keep doing it, but I wasn't going to do it in the same way that if someone actually believes in me, that telling me that I can do it.
mhm.
And that was the same thing with me. I just had very specific people. Like one of the person that like always pushed me, obviously, like I said before, was my dad. He just like you can do it, and that's what kept me going for a lot of the points where I felt like I couldn't. He was just like, no, you can do it, and that sometimes, like I said, that's all it takes.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
played a role in terms of me actually becoming competent in something like basketball. I don't know if we ever talked about it, but I actually used to play basketball, and because I started late, like I think I started in grade 7. Most people who've been playing basketball, they've been playing since like grade 2 or something. So you can imagine this the along with me not being athletic naturally, the gap in skill between me and others was huge.
Was your father your guy sensei?
Absolutely, yeah. In
Interesting.
fact, I think we talked about it before. My
Yep.
friends would call my dad Guy Sensei just because of like he didn't know so much. Like I showed him a bit of Naruto in terms of Guy, and he knows of the character, but he didn't know people like all my friends would call him Guy Sensei because he was that guy in terms of pun intended.
I
Uh,
was just that was nice.
yeah, pun intended for not just me but my other friends. Guy would also support other. Well, you'll see it. He supports other characters, but obviously Rock Lee is his prodigy, right? Is his
Mhm.
protege, is his son, his son, not son, and that played a big impact on me in terms of me pushing for and doing things. In fact, like almost every so when I got to high school, I got cut from the basketball team every year until grade. So for us in Quebec, high school goes up to grade 11, so that's the last year. So grade 11 is when I actually like made the team. I couldn't play because I had my back surgery not too long ago, the year before, but I actually made the team. I actually made the cut because of me just diligently practicing on my shooting range. So I would go to the basketball court on like every Saturday.
Yeah.
From I think 10 a.m. to about 2 p.m. This is like when I was 17, 18, so I don't remember that well. 17 actually. And I would practice. I wouldn't go home until I landed. And you as a basketball player understand how far I went with this. I wouldn't go home until I landed. What was it like? It was, I think it was about 50 to 100 3-pointers. And I would shoot on double rims.
Okay, that's pretty good then.
Yeah, and I wouldn't go home until I made that. And if I didn't make that, I'd have to keep shooting. Like I had to do five straight, like at each of the the specific points on the 3-point line, and then I would have to do about like 10 to 20 free throws, and then suicide layups, like 10-2. It might have been like 9-2 or something along those lines every Saturday until it got. It's Montreal. We're in Canada. It's gonna get cold, so I use the whole summer to do that until that point. And so that's what allowed me to actually make it to the cut for the first time, because there's a really cool quote that Rock Lee said that I very much relate to when he was talking to Guy. When Rock Lee and Guy was first connecting, he was saying how every time he was on a mission, his legs would tremble. And that's actually the case for me when I would play basketball. I'd always get nervous. And so I wouldn't be able to perform during basketball tries, so I'd play really bad. Because, like, when you're so psyched up on like, oh man, if I make a mistake, I'm going to get cut. So in order for me to overcome that, I just practice 3 points to the point where I don't have to think about it anymore. So when I was in tryouts, my threes were just landing. Even though I was nervous, I was able to overcome that by just practicing threes so much. I knew exactly I wasn't very good at other positions. I didn't have very good basketball IQ because that plays a role, but I knew my threes will land. My threes will drain, especially since it's single rim. I was shooting on double rim. So just going back on, and I was doing this even before I was watching Naruto. I was already watching anime at that point, but I didn't really. Actually, I was watching Naruto dub. I didn't get to that point with Rock Lee yet. And so when I saw Rock Lee take off weights, I was like, this is exactly me. This is exactly what I do all the time. Whenever I'm practicing things, I make it extremely hard for myself. So when I have to perform, it's easy. It's soft. But the idea of overcoming that nervousness was just from like me just constantly practicing with myself every day. And that played a role in terms of like my competency when it comes to esports with regards to fighting games like Guilty Gear. I don't know if there's any points that you can relate on that in terms of that, but that's something that really connected with me in terms of Rock Lee and his diligence.
The examples you brought up, yes, it's very relatable because one of the things people used to say, especially when you play basketball, is that you always hear the term, "Oh, this guy's a practice player," but in game he can't perform. And so, so definitely, I understand exactly what you're saying. What I used to do was, because even if whether you play, for fun, competitively, or even professional, you're always gonna have that nervousness. I've noticed. But one of the things that I used to do was I used to try to shoot really far so that when I'm at the 3-point line, it wouldn't be as hard. So I used to try to. So it's sort of like Steph Curry before Steph Curry made that popular. So I used to shoot.
To talk about, by the way.
Yeah, so I used to shoot really far, and because I wasn't really much of a shooter, I was a mid-range jumper. So I used to shoot really, really, really far, and then I remember game time comes, and then I'm able to shoot some threes because I'm like, oh, this is not as far. It's very psychological. It's very psychological.
It's easier.
Yeah, it's easier, and especially when you practice for that long and that many shots, yeah, it becomes easier. So I can definitely relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, there's actually I think there's studies on it where like those who compete in anything, your skills are actually going to go down no matter what in terms of performing for a crowd. It varies from person to person and your idiosyncrasies, but your competency is going to go down. So what you want to do is bring your skill level to a point where even if your skill level goes down, it still is of a good standard. If you get what I'm trying to say, you want to be like at like 150%. So if a crowd is there, you only fall down to about 90 to 100%. Rather, if you try to get to 100, you're going to fall to like 50. And that's when you obviously look incompetent, right? And so
Yeah.
that's always been my mindset when it comes to stuff, just to build myself in terms of having a skill that I know how the nervousness will affect me and it'll diminish.
You know what's so interesting that you say that? It's that I used to play very good if the opposing crowd would tease me. I played
One of
very
them,
good. Huh?
you're
Yeah, I was one of
or
them.
Kobe,
Yeah. I
Michael Jordan.
remember, I would never forget, but I remember there's this one guy that said, "Hey, number 11, do you think you're that good?" And I was at the free throw line. Everything was quiet. So I remember I made a free throw, turned back, and I was just like, shh, just be quiet.
Yeah, you
And
gave him
I've,
the
man,
yeah.
yeah, I played very well. Like if you try to tease me or mock me, I'll play really good. But if everyone was with me and just cheering on, and I just played okay. I was just right
Mm,
there.
interesting.
Yeah.
I can't really say. It depends on what it is. I don't say anything when someone's trash talking. I wait till everything's done. That's always been my thing. I wait till the game is done. Like, especially like I said, I'm more esports, so fighting games. I'll wait till it's done and I'll be like, what were you saying?
Man, I live in the
But
I live in the moment. I need that pressure.
but I would say so. You may have heard of the game Dragon Ball Fighters. It's a fighting game made by the same company as Guilty Gear. And one of my friends said that I won't be able to beat him in it. Even though he's never really played traditional fighting games, he said that I won't be able to beat him in it because he's a god in any Dragon Ball game. I was like, yo, this guy's talking trash. I'm like, you know what? We went to play the game with another guy I know, and he beat me. Because hold on, let me put it. I think you've seen it before. I play on an arcade stick. So I'm really serious, and like I didn't know, I didn't really watch much of Dragon Ball Fighters. I don't really like the way the mechanics work. I wasn't just really a fan of it. I'm not a crazy Dragon Ball fan,
Hmm.
and when we were playing with it, I also didn't understand the mechanics. And for me, I know that I have to sit down with a game for at least a few hours to understand the mechanics, how to move, how to combo. I can't just
Hmm.
figure it out on the fly. It's not how I am. I have to have a very good fundamental understanding of the game for me to start doing things on the fly.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I can't. Even then, I can't even learn a bunch of characters. I have to stay with very specific characters and I become a character specialist. I'm not one of those people that they play 15 characters. It's like no, 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 no. I'm not sick like that. But I will specialize with one or two at best. And so we went to go play Dragon Ball Fighters. He floored me, right? So, but I didn't care.
Wait,
Like it's
wait,
what.
hold on. Are you talking about the Dragon Ball Z fighter game?
Yeah,
Oh, that one. Oh yeah, I didn't like the way it looked.
I love the way they did a great job with it in terms of
It's
matching the 3D 2D thing. But I don't like
yeah.
fighting games that don't have very good. So I'm gonna go into the little particularities about fighting games now. I don't like fighting games that have very little defensive mechanics. Dragon Ball Fighter is a very offensive game. There's
Yep.
nothing wrong with that. It's not my cup of tea. So I say that in a sense of you're playing the game. He floored me, but for me, I've learned to keep my ego in check because I'm like, if I were to worry about every time I lose at something, then I'll be always fixated on trying to beat and prove myself to other people. It's a waste of time. Like I don't need to do that. He played, he won. I was like, that's whatever. I'm not really gonna. I don't want to play the game anyways. This guy started talking trash on the way home. He was like, bro, I'm the god in Dragon Ball games. You may be Rock Lee, but I'm Sasuke that works hard. You're not going to beat me in Dragon Ball Fighters. I
That
said,
doesn't even
oh,
make
yeah.
sense.
I was like, oh, yeah. Bet.
Yeah.
Because at this point, because Dragon Ball Fighters came out on PlayStation 4, they didn't come on PS3. I was still playing Guilty Gear Xrd, which is a PS3, PS4 game. It's a cross-platform game, right? It's a cross-system game. So I was still using my old arcade stick that I modded with my dad. I didn't need to get I wasn't playing any PS4, Xbox One exclusive fighting games. I didn't need to get a new arcade stick. That's how uninvested I was or disinterested I was in Dragon Ball Fighters. He said that. I was like, oh yeah. Bought myself a PS4 arcade stick. Bought myself Dragon Ball Fighters. Practiced the game. I picked Goku, Adult Gohan, even before I knew a tier list. I just picked the characters I like and Trunks because Trunks' Japanese voice actor is the same as Kai in Guilty Gear. and they both have blonde hair and swords. So those are the three I played. Plus Goku and Gohan, they're all like kind of what's called shotos, so they play like Ryu. And those are the characters I tend to play in fighting games. So I know exactly what works for me in fighting games. Practice those three characters for like a total of like 5 hours. Like if you look at my trophies, like you can search on my profile, Blade of Justice 7. If you look at my account, I only have one trophy, which is training mode for like a few hours. That's all I did.
I don't know, but the ego sounding crazy about now.
Oh yeah, we're going somewhere with this. So because he said that he's like, I'm Sasuke that works hard, and you're not gonna be. You may be Rock Lee, but you're not gonna. Like, that was the thing he said. This is when I decided to play the game. He's like, you might be good in Guilty Gear, but you're not gonna beat me in any Dragon Ball game. I'm like, you do know the people who made Guilty Gear are the people who made this Dragon Ball game. He's like, I don't care, you're not gonna beat me. I was like, so you're gonna talk about Guilty Gear? Okay. Now I'm invested. So I bought Dragon Ball Fighters. I bought a new arcade stick, practicing him for 5 hours, went to his place on his birthday, beat him like, I think it was like 10-2. And my last move being a father-son, like Goku and Gohan doing the Kamehameha on Broly, like that move. You remember that move?
Yep, father-son Kamehameha.
Exactly. So they did that was I finished the combo, knocked him down. I did the father-son Kamehameha. I put down my arcade stick. I looked at him like, don't ever talk shit about Guilty Gear again. That was it. I got up. Haven't touched Dragon Ball Fighter since then. I actually gave the copy away.
Okay, you're those type of players, huh?
Yeah, I was like, don't
you were. Oh my! I'll be honest. I do not like those type of players. Like, if they get one win, they never play again. To make
that was it. I don't like the game. Like, I'm not gonna practice the game again because I don't like it. Like, I don't like. I love watching it, but I don't find it very fun. Like, I'm not paid to play games yet, and then also I don't know if I really fully want to in terms of like how esports work. So I'm not gonna play a game I don't like. But if you're gonna talk shit and think I can't beat you, I'll play you in the game. I'm just never gonna play the game again. Like I played it, and I was like, I don't want to play this game again.
That's
you play through story mode. You had like 15 characters you picked from. I only picked 3. I stayed with the same 3. I didn't do anything. You couldn't beat me. You won like 2 matches, and I also beat all of his other mans. The only guy that beat me on his birthday night was someone who actively plays esports Dragon Ball Fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I gave him a run for his money. But like, I was like, I don't. After he beat me, I was like, I don't care. I'm not gonna play this game again. But I beat the person who talked the shit. So yeah, that's what it is. Just don't. If you talk shit, I'm gonna come after you. But like, otherwise, I'm like, whatever. If you cool, what?
Let me guess who he beat you with. Broly. I knew
Broly was one. No,
I never played the game, but I just know
it wasn't Broly. It wasn't Broly. Someone tried to beat me with Broly, but because like I play fighting games, right? Yeah. So I know exactly. This is the reason why I love Renji's fight in the 1,000-Year Blood War. He fought dirty. The guy picked Broly. I was like, I'm gonna just shoot projectiles. I'm not gonna go close. The moment I got close to his Broly, and his Broly like super armored me, like with a lariat, and sent me to the wall, I was like, oh, you're a grapple character? Like Zangief and Potemkin? I'm gonna just fight long range. People are like, oh, why are you playing? Like, did I win though? Why am your character specializes in close range? Why am I gonna run at you with Trunks?
That's a fair point.
No, that's how you win at fighting. Is you use your ability. So I'm like, no, I just started moving away, dodging him, and only going in after he blocked, because he would swing hard with characters with moves that are unsafe, and then I would do a combo, knock him down, run away. And his Broly went out. I was like, I'm not gonna get close to you. Your character's gonna kill me if he gets close. So I'm not gonna do that. And I won. Like he thought he would beat me with Broly, but I'm like, I'm not gonna get close to you. You think I'm dumb? No, I'm gonna just beat you from long range. That's why I picked these characters in case you'd pick a character like that. The guy that beat me, I think he used Bardock, so I didn't know what to do. By then, Bardock was out.
I think it's just Goku when you think about it. Bardock is just Goku when you think about it.
But he had like that. He had like I think it was a super or a special that just went full screen and hit you. You couldn't really react to it. It was a really fast move.
Okay. Because one of his super attack. Well, I never played the game, but just knowing the character, because I played Raging Blast too. But one of his special moves is basically the Kamehameha, but just with one hand.
Oh yeah, no, not that one. That wasn't so much an issue. I know you're talking about like I'm gonna change the future. Not that. He actually has like some special move that's like full screen. So, sorry, he always says like, I'm gonna change the future. He always says that. I don't mean to bark Bardock. He's a dope character, but no, he has a move that like is like a full screen like swing punch. I can't remember. It's either special or a special move or a super move that like, it's hard to react to. So I didn't practice against that. Right, like that's more of a specialized fighting game character rather than like Broly. He just plays like again like any other grapple character, like a Zangief from Street Fighter or Potemkin from Guilty Gear. So I'm like, oh, if I'm gonna follow based off those mechanics, then you have no projectiles, so it means I can run away.
That's a
keep
good
running
point.
away.
Yeah, that's a good point. And another thing is that so you did make your point there, but also just going back to the anime, Naruto.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, the thing I like about Rock Lee is that I think I stated this before, but he was
a relatable character. I mean, if I had to pick between Deku and Rock Lee and who I relate to the most, 100% is going to be Rock Lee. I think I told you that my favorite characters my favorite characters was Gaara and Rock Lee. But I'm at a point in Naruto where I'm sort of I am exposed to Gaara's personality, and I just don't like Gaara anymore. It's too dark. I can't relate to that. Yeah, I just can't relate to his personality. But now I'm looking at Rock Lee, who has, he's injured. He's being told that he'll never be a ninja again, and I'm just like, wow. I think that in society, people will be able to really relate to Rock Lee. He's such a relatable character.
I love Rock Lee. I'm actually gonna be. There's actually 3 different sculptures I've seen of Rock Lee lately, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy them. Like he's had a huge impact on me. And even in terms of just the idea of specializing. So like I said, I growing up, I saw a lot of things.
Hold on. So what do you mean by specializing?
So yeah, Rock Lee can do ninjutsu. He can mold chakra in terms of doing ninjutsu or genjutsu. And for me, not being good at a lot of things also, so there's 2 fronts. So like I said, overall I just wasn't athletic. Like even going back in my childhood, I was always whenever we go, I'm half Nigerian, so we always had like Nigerian parties and events in Montreal. And I would always come last in the race among my classmates, my age mates. I would always come in last. Like I wasn't fast. And so overall, I was just seen as like a disappointment in terms of like extended immediate family. Like I was just like, this kid is not good in school. He's not good in sports. He's a no good. Damedes. No good.
So just for people who may not know, but can you just go into why is it so important that he was unable to do those 2 jitsu? And how does that relate to, of course, you not being able to play basketball? Just so people can get that context.
Yeah, well, I would even focus more in terms of school. For me, my learning disability is called information processing deficit. We've never covered it, but essentially it means that, so let's say you download a song, right? You have a desktop computer, you download a song, you can see it on the desktop, right? The file is saved there. Even though it's taking up space, you can see the file. In the case of my brain, sometimes you can't open up the file. So it means that sometimes I'll have the information in my head about like the math equation or the answer, but I might lose it. So my working memory is very poor. So it means I've had to find ways of working around that. The same way Rock Lee struggles in terms of molding his chakra for ninjutsu and genjutsu, I struggled that in terms of math and sciences and whatnot. So I had to develop workarounds around that to be able to get through in life. And that's the reason why I very much relate to me. Even in terms of all the different things I've done, I've really had to be aware of how many things I can take on at a time. So like I said, when it comes to fighting games or even other video games in general, I only learn like at best 1 or 2 characters, but I'll specialize in those characters. I'll know everything about those characters inside and out. So it allows me to overcome my opponent who may play like 15 characters. I'll play like 1. Right? It's the same thing with Rock Lee. He specialized in taijutsu. It kind of goes back to the Bruce Lee quote. I don't fear the man who has practiced 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced 1 kick 1,000 times.
Yep. I love that quote. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was basically me. I couldn't do all the kicks. The same reason technically, even though Rock Lee is a kicker, because taijutsu, but he couldn't do all these different things, but he specialized in one thing to be able to overcome, right? And that's the thing that I loved about him, is that his willingness to specialize in having one specific skill set. There's even a great quote in the show. What was it? I'm trying to find it right now. I think I remember off the top of my head because it's had this show has had such a big impact on me. I'm trying to find it right now. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's not that when Sakura. So remember like when he was fighting Gara, and like Sakura's like, why is he only like trying to punch him? And then Guy responded. I love how Guy was basically a whole narrator of the Rock Lee Gara fight. He was like, it's not that Lee doesn't use Genjutsu, it's that he can't. Lee almost has no ninjutsu or genjutsu skills. That's why the only path for Lee open to Lee as a ninja was taijutsu.
The analogy that you used to describe yourself and Lee was actually beautiful, because what you just said now sort of like, imagine if someone comes up to you and say, well, I can't really read. Like, you're gonna be like, what do you mean you can't read? You see what I'm saying? So when
Yeah.
when Guy said, well, it's not that he doesn't want to do it or whatever, but it's just that he can't. Do you remember the reaction? They were actually surprised. It was like as someone said that
What?
he
Is that
couldn't read.
possible?
Like, yeah, is that possible? Like, we all have chakra. What do you mean he can't do it and he wants to be a ninja? So that analogy that you said was actually really beautiful.
Yeah, because that's me, and that's still me. I remember even like when I first got hired with my previous job with the Boys and Girls Club. I remember Deb was asking me if I could take on more shifts for work, and I told her that I won't be able to take on more. I know I won't be able to. I have to first really figure out what I'm doing at work before I take on more tasks. I had to first specialize with my task and what I'm given before I add more. So it's not that I don't want to, it's that I can't. And even for her, she was like, what? What do you mean you can't? But I know my limitations in terms of what I can take on, because my assessment, like I said, the only reason I was able to get through school is because I had to be really aware of there's things I just can't do. I can't like great example in terms of university. So like for my sister, she would write her papers like basically the night before. So it's a combination of something that she could do, and also the things that she'd read before weren't any good for her, and so she'd just erase it and do it all again overnight. I remember trying to write a paper in one night, and I couldn't do it. I barely got through with it. So I had to learn from that experience that like I'm just not built the same way as my sister. It's kind of like what we're saying about Deku and Rock Lee in terms of never giving up on themselves. They're just built different. Some people are just like that. So for me, it's not that I don't want to write a paper last minute. It's just I can't. I can't afford to. So I would actually space out my papers. Once I get assigned a paper, whether it was in college or university, I'd space out the paper over the course of a month. More so than that, I would actually write a little bit like the intro and a little bit of a paragraph. I'd go see my professor, get their input on my paper and how I'm writing it, get their insights to what they're expecting, so I get in the full understanding of their insight on what they want the papers to look like, and then I would finish writing and then I would structure I'd go to the writing center. I would help formulate my paper on what it was going to look like from each paragraph. Then I would write the paper over the course of a month. And then in the last week or so, I'd go back to the writing center to proofread my whole paper I'd proofread it myself, go to the writing center, proofread my paper with the people with the writing assistant tutors, and then come home, proofread it again to see if I like the structure. And then I think the night before I'd write the conclusion, and then I'd submit the paper. What as much as like that's so much detail and so much necessary work, it's the reason why my papers got 90%.
And that's really good, because I'm not gonna lie, I was the student that I would write my paper like 2 nights before, but I would get 70s, right? Because I didn't do that proper step. But I also wanted to point out this. Now, I'm not going to say this just to say it, but I think that having high self awareness is a form of superpower, because the amount of problems you could get yourself out of, and also the amount of self improvements you can do by having self awareness, I think that it's unlimited, right? The possibility is crazy when you think about it. So I think having I think having a high self awareness is a form of superpower. To be honest,
I
like
think you have to be, and that's one of the things that I loved about both Rock Lee and well, I'd emphasize more Deco on this than Rock Lee, in a sense of having that self awareness of your skills and your strengths, because you're still at the beginning of Hero. But one of the things I loved about Deco is because he's not very much like Rock Lee. He's not very physically adept. Like neither of them are very athletic naturally. They both
yeah,
develop their athleticism, and Deku, because of that, and because he's still learning how to use One for All, is that he's had to be aware of other people's strengths. He has to be acutely aware of, I can't punch like that, I can't swing like that. But Ida, who has like the engine on his legs, he can kick like that. So we can get him to do that challenge. You're gonna see that a lot in season 2. Is that you're gonna see him like, okay, this person's good at this and this person's good at that, which has helped him develop really good, like I guess you could say, leadership skills. I can't do this. This person can though. And that's the same thing with myself. I've had to be aware of there's things I can and can't do. Sorry, you're about to say?
no, I was gonna say yeah. So exactly that's a perfect example of what I mean by self awareness is a superpower, because look at Deku for example. Do you remember that one fighting scene when he was fighting his childhood friend, the person who
Yeah,
specialized in fire? I forgot
Bakugo.
his name.
Bakugo.
Yeah, so when he was fighting him, he said, "Well, I know exactly when you're gonna kick."
Yep.
Right, so he used that self awareness to his advantage. Not only that, I mean, when you look at now, let's go back to Naruto and with Rock Lee, the fact that he was able to realize at a very early age that I can't do ninjutsu and
Again.
genjutsu.
Hmm.
I can only do taijutsu. Um, and I'm fine. Of course, it's not that I'm fine with that, but let me just make the most out of my situation and turn a negative into a positive. And the fact that he was able to realize at such a young age, I think that's amazing, right? And
Hmm.
now he's literally the best person, the best taijutsu specialist in the
Specialist. Yep.
world.
Yep. Right
So
after Guy. Yeah.
and so it goes back to my whole point. Definitely self awareness is a superpower. And then even not only that, I mean, if you were to take such example and just put it to the real world, our real world, think of it like this. I mean, if you were to listen to your body, you're really hyper self aware of, okay, I know I don't normally feel like this. Something must be going on in my body. You can prevent something tragic like
For
we
sure.
don't know. So I don't know. I like to think like that.
No,
I
that's
like to think
actually,
like
you're actually speaking on a lot of on what my guy sense and my dad had said for me growing up. He's like, you have to constantly be aware of yourself. That's something he always like preached to me growing up, is that you have to be constantly aware of yourself. If your body is itchy when you didn't like sleep properly, it means that your body's is having a negative reaction to your sleep deprivation. So if you don't want to be itchy, then sleep properly. Because my dad went to school went to partially completed med school.
that.
So one of those things is preventative medicine. So observe your things in the way your body reacts in order to be able to prevent certain things. And the only way to do it is to constantly watch yourself and your body and how it reacts to certain things. And that's something I did growing up. So I just learned to just be aware of those things. Along with being assessed, it made me, I guess you could say, hyper aware of those things in terms of my strengths and my weaknesses. Which is really interesting. So like one of my earlier conversations with Jamar, who we're gonna have on for our Dragon Ball Z episode that's gonna be coming up. When he talked to me about like some of the things I do and the things I can do, he was surprised by how acutely aware of my strengths and my weaknesses were. Because he said, "Oh, you have a really good understanding of what you can and can't do." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've had to. That's what I've had to do to survive. If I didn't do those things, I wouldn't make it." Like imagine not Rock, actually both Rock Lee, but I would emphasize Deku. Imagine Deku just continued to punch and kick the way that he initially did in the first 4 episodes. He wouldn't make it, right? But he's had to learn to tweak the way he's used his powers more and more, especially from the pressure of Aizawa and everything, right?
Yeah, I agree. Uh, I can definitely relate to what you just said right there because I remember when I did the Stepstones retreat. For people who may not know, it was this retreat that worked on personal development,
Mm-hmm.
and so I did that. And I remember we came to this one activities that we did where it said, "Well, describe your strength and weakness." When the instructor came to me and he was looking at my paper. He noticed that I wrote nothing down. And then he asked me, "Why didn't you write anything?" And I said, "Well, I said, I'm telling you, you guys are late. I've done this self development on myself for the past 12 years. I know what my strengths are and I know what my weaknesses are. Maybe I may not know like the little nuance of, probably like negative, behaviors, but I'm very much aware of what makes me mad and what makes me happy, what I like, what I don't like. So when he told me, "Oh, that's amazing, but do you want to just write it down?" And I said, I'd rather not because I want to internalize these things. And then he was like, "Okay, that's fine." So I could definitely relate to what you're saying. So I think it's a superpower, right? But honestly, I don't want to change the topic too, but I think self-awareness has to be one of the most powerful superpower to have. But if I can have another one, it would probably be reading fast. I want to read fast, faster, and process the information extremely fast.
I don't.
I want to do that. I don't know
I
why.
don't because I've seen how my friends who read much faster than me don't process things as in depth as I do. I process it
No, but
slower.
that's what I said. Read fast and also be able to process the information.
Well, I think we'll definitely kind of cover that a little bit more in our Death Note episode and geniuses and
Yeah,
whatnot.
yeah, that's
But
another
I
topic.
think our brains are hardwired, and also it kind of goes into our conversation about mob cycle. Our brains are very hardwired in very specific ways, and your brain's always going to have some sort of weakness with the way it's wired. Like no one comes up. You're not going to have. I know I'm using kind of video game and anime analogy. You're not going to have max parameters in all aspects of your life in life. You're going to have, for lack of a better word, deficits.
Yeah, it's a give and take. I agree.
Yeah. It's just like Deb is much better than me when it comes to like math and sciences, but Deb has no geographical awareness and coordination. Versus myself, I can if I go somewhere, I know how to come back the exact same way. I know exactly the streets and how to like go through a map without a GPS.
Yeah, but it would really be amazing to have. But
Yeah, for
anyways,
sure.
it would be
But then
amazing to have.
it would still come with its own weaknesses in one way or another. Maybe you lack social skills or something. Like it's gonna be, or maybe sorry, you might not like have like social and emotional skills on point as like someone else who maybe is good at poetry, but they read slow. So there's always going to be some sort of deficit, and um, that's something that I've had to learn to work on in terms of myself. So I know when I was first assessed with my learning challenge, my learning disability, I learned that I read much slower. I don't know if that's what you're kind of referring to before, but yeah, I read slower, so
Hmm.
I have to spend more time reading articles or whatever than others, and having once again people push you to challenge yourself to overcome your weaknesses by sharpening your skills has been a big impact on me. And in fact, like there's another person that had a huge impact on me. I was telling Deb I want to go visit him. It's one of my favorite teachers of all time. Probably my favorite teacher. His name is Philip Beauchamp. He was actually the first teacher. You can see my name right here if you're watching this, and not on the podcast. My name is Abera Norum, and he actually was the first teacher, fully Quebecois guy, but he pronounced my full first name Abera Chuku Norum first try because he used to teach in Nigeria. And I remember he's basically like my Aizawa. You know how like Ozawa's just like, yo, I'll kick this kid out. I don't care if he's all my student. I'll kick him out if he's not that good. And that was a lot of my teacher Philip Beauchamp. He expected excellence from us. And so I remember one of the papers I handed back, he's like, I'm disappointed, you could have done better. That was the first time my teacher ever told me that.
Oh, that hurts.
It does, right? Like where someone's like,
Yeah,
I
it
expected better
hurts.
from you. I'm disappointed. Like that had a huge impact, and that really pushed me to work harder. And that's how he helped me develop my skills. In terms of like the writing center, and learning how to write my papers, how to study better, so on and so forth. He's the one who really pushed the ethic of like how to work. Even though I hadn't been assessed yet, he's the one who really helped me figure out how to learn a little bit better.
It's like, wow, you had expectation of me. You saw me that highly,
And I let you down.
and I let you down.
Crazy. It's tough. It's tough. And I was just like, I don't want to do that again. I don't want him to be disappointed in me like every day we have a test. So he's the one who taught me like when you have a test, he's the one who told me this. Go see a teacher before the test to get an idea of the things you need to focus on in terms of the test. I never thought of that before. He just had a huge impact on me for that. And that's what carried forward in terms of my life, in terms of how I would study, even in terms of how I work now, especially sometimes I can work from home. I would do training mode. I'd practice Guilty Gear or Blaze Blue. I used to play Blaze Blue a lot. I'd practice Guilty Gear and Blaze Blue combos while I had to study, or even now as I work. When I have to do like paperwork, I'd sit down and just practice combos as I work to give myself breaks, and so I can develop my skills. So like when it comes to when I'm in a tournament or something, even though I'm nervous, right? I don't drop the combos. Like it's to the point where like other people who play my character Kai, like this guy's combos are really good. Why? Because I've practiced the combo like 85 times. I remember there was a combo I had a hard time with. I spent like a week just doing that one combo. I didn't change it. I just every day, when I'm working or I'm not working, I practice that one combo until I got it.
I have a question to ask you. Okay, so if we were to relate this back to Naruto, Naruto. Okay, so and let's say in this situation, you are Rock Lee. Your father is the influence your father had on you is definitely is Guy Sensei. So this French teacher, who would you say he
Kakashi.
represents? Kakashi?
Definitely, because Kakashi
that's a
still
good
had doubts on
example.
Rock Lee, right?
Yeah.
But it was only like after Rock Lee really showed something. No, this guy's something special. I could see why Guy was so committed to him. I see it now. There's always going to be people who doubt you. That's fine, but show them who you are. In terms of like what T'Challa's mom said in the first Black Panther movie, show them who you are. Show them who you are. Show them what you're capable of, and people's perspective will change. The one thing I've seen in life is that consistency really can change anyone's perspective on you. If you show up every day, it can change. It won't change everybody, but it can change a lot of people's perspective on you when you have that level of consistency of just coming in every day and putting in the work, whatever that work is, whether it's practicing combos in Guilty Gear, practicing your 3-point shooting, or coming out with bombast papers for your class. It's always going to show itself.
You know, I also want to ask you another question because I think in the show, Sakura said something that was very interesting, and I actually reminded of it right now. Sakura said, "Do you remember the scene? I don't know if you probably do because it was you watched Naruto a long time ago.
Yeah, I was in my late teens and I watched it.
But there was that one scene where Rock Lee finds himself in the hospital because, of course, Gaara just took his arm and his leg, right? And then Sakura comes to visit him. And then he's not there on his bed. In fact, he's actually outside and he's doing push-ups. And then, Sakura's like, why are boys like that? Like, why do they have this need to push themselves? So my question to ask you is this now. Okay, why do you find yourself even practicing Guilty Gear combos? Like, what's the benefit of that? Like, why do you have to go so hard when you don't need to? Like, for example, Rock Lee in his situation, yes, of course, his goal is to be a ninja, but he was literally told that he can't be a ninja anymore. So it's like, why even continue? When now he could have just done it for fun, right? So I guess relating back to you, why do you need to go crazy knowing that you could just do it for fun? You're not forced to do it anymore.
I like to challenge myself. That's the first answer I can think of. I think that's something that we can expand on more as we talk about it. But I have a need to challenge myself.
But why not play for fun?
I do enjoy it. It is technically for fun, but it's also I like to push my limits. I like to see what I'm capable of. And also just the idea of winning and losing builds character. It's also what strengthened me. So like not being that great in school and so on and so forth.
Okay, so how do you measure the goalposts? So for example, when you're practicing these combos, whatever, I've seen a snippet. Of course, not it wasn't really clear to me, but I've seen a snippet, and it was very competitive, man. So it was like, how do you measure that goalpost? How do you know if you push yourself far enough?
It depends. So I have to create the standard for myself first. That's something that I learned with this new Guilty Gear. I really revamped the way I approach things in terms of I'm not concerned. There was I forgot his name. He's a top player. Romo something. And he said I played him once in Ottawa. Sorry, in Montreal for one of the Montreal big tournaments. You know, I helped build the Montreal scene. UMAD, an ultimate Montreal Air Dashers. And I was watching one of his, I think it's Romotello, and he was saying how when he was focused on, what was the term? He was focused on performing better than doing better. No, he was more focused on doing better than performing better. That's
a bit confusing.
So doing better means where am I placing in tournaments? Performing better is how well am I playing my character? So because he was he became more focused on like his tournament results, like whether he's first, second, third, well, she or he, I think they go by she now. When they were focused on their tournament results, they weren't doing as well because they're so fixated on am I getting first, second, or third, versus when they were just focused on how well they were playing Soul Bad Guy and Guilty Gear. That's when they did better in tournaments. So for me, it depends. So if I'm playing someone and I could lose 7 matches straight, but if that combo I was practicing, I landed it 10 out of 10 times and I succeeded. That's the main thing I'm focused on. I'm not so much focused on am I winning every match? Like, no, are you performing the combo in the way that you want to?
So if I understand, so it's practicing that move and being successful at it, and then you're gonna go on to so I'm not master, but I'm able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me see if I'm able to add this on top of that.
Exactly. Now let's focus on beating this person. Can I beat this person? Actually, no. Let me understand how this person plays. Let me break down their play style, and then we'll see how much I can adapt to their play style and see, if I win. But the main thing for me is, am I learning how to play against this character now? That's my main thing I'm next focused on. I'm not so much fixated on like, am I going to win 50 times? May or may not happen, but am I understanding how this character works now? So I remember, there was one guy, I play him online a lot. His name is New Breed. Maybe you might listen to this one day. We were playing Guilty Gear. He's playing like a different character. He plays like this character, Milia Rage. She's a very fast character, very hard to keep up with. The first time we played online, he beat me like 16-6. Completely wrecked me, right? After that, because every time I went into a Guilty Gear tournament online, every time someone played this character, there was a pretty good chance I was going to lose, no matter what, no matter how good or not good they were in terms of skill level and competency. So what I did was, this is the first time me talking about this besides telling him this, because he was wondering how my skill level jumped so much. For the next month and a half, so like when Guilty Gear Strive first came out, and I've been playing Guilty Gear for those that don't know since like Accent Core. I played seriously since Accent Core. But Guilty Gear Zero and Strive and whatnot and BlazBlue was when I started playing competitively. Anyways, so the way I learned to play against Milia Rage, the character that moves fast, that fights with her hair, for the next month and a half, even though there's like about 17 to 19 characters that are out in the game, I only played people who played that character for a month and a half of any skill level. So just to be able to adjust with how everyone plays this character and their options. And on top of that, the only thing I really watched was how people who played my character, Kai, played against me. So for a month and a half, it was only this character. I only watched and played against this character and another character. They're both the fastest characters in the game. His name is Chip. He's a ninja. I only played people who played these characters for a month and a half. Only watched footage of those characters for a month and a half. Consistently. Only practice different mechanics against those characters for a month and a half. Just to get an understanding. And then when I played him again, I beat him like I think it was like 16-10. I think at one point within our match it was 8-0. It went from him decimating me to me bodying him. And he was like, what happened? Like, how did you get so good? I'm like, for the last month and a half, that's all I've been practicing. I've just been practicing against your character. So when we played, my competency showed up.
You know what's interesting about Rock Lee's character that I've noticed, and it just dawned to me, is that aside from the Sasuke fight,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm on like episode 60 now, so I haven't seen much of Rock Lee yet,
Mm-hmm.
and he's still injured. His success, and this is gonna the way I'm gonna say this is gonna sound weird, but his success is actually measured by how hard he fails. It's very interesting. So the fact that he lost, the first one was he lost against Neji. Is it
Neji,
Neji or
yeah.
Neji, right?
Neji, yeah.
Neji. So he lost against Neji, but he was deemed to be very powerful.
Also against Neji several times, actually. Mm-hmm.
No, the first fight he lost that I saw was he lost against the Sound Clan. Do you
Yes.
remember that?
Yeah.
So he lost. He
They
lost.
double teamed him, triple teamed him, actually. Mm-hmm.
So he lost, but he was unable to take down one.
Mm-hmm.
So he lost against the Sound Clan. But it was interesting because when he fought Neji,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't think he was the same person. It was like he was much stronger. It was crazy, despite the fact that he failed really hard. So the fact, what I'm getting from Rock Lee's character is that there's a crazy level of self improvement in his failure
Mm-hmm.
that not a lot of people can come to terms with. People think that if I fail extremely hard, I'm just not good at this, and why should I even continue?
That's something that like my wife really learned from me because Deb does really good at a lot of things, and I'm the opposite. Like her
Interesting.
GPA is significantly higher than mine, to give you an
Interesting.
example. And because of that, and this is what's interesting because we always think the glass is always greener. Sorry, the grass is not glass. The grass is, I mixed up the analogies. The grass is always green on the other side.
Yeah.
Because of that, I'm so used to failure. I'm so used to losing. So I'm
Interesting.
more appreciative of when I do win, one. And then two, because I've lost so much, I know that, like I said, when I lost against that guy 16-10, I was like, okay, I need to really focus against this character. I need to just hone in and specialize on this and just keep working. I wasn't expecting to like win. I was just expecting to just do better than just 10-60. Sorry, 16-8. So when we played, it was like 16-10. That's how the gap. I was surprised when I won 8 matches straight, he couldn't beat me. It took him a long time to adjust. And even when I took a long break from Guilty Gear again, he beat me like, I think it was like 15-20. And then the next time we played, I beat him like 20-18. So once again, because I specialized and I worked at it again, I'm like, okay. I took like almost a year break from the game. I specialized and just focused on very specific mechanics. So when I came back to the game, I just focused on understanding new mechanics they added to the new updates to Guilty Gear. I just focused on that. Or even when I came to Blackner Talks or whatever, whenever something didn't go well, I'm like, okay, well, it didn't go well, just like a lot of my things in life. Like I said, I'm coming last place in track and field at the Nigerian picnics. I'm coming last place in school. I'm coming last place in basketball. So there's nothing new here. I'm last. So what do we need to improve?
So
herself.
Hold on, I have a question about that. So because okay, this is very interesting for the viewers, for the listener at home. So when did you realize that moment where, okay, you know what? I fail a lot, but let me make the most out of it. Like, when was that moment? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Probably from fighting games.
Fighting game. So
Mhm.
from the fighting game, that's when you realize, okay, you know what? I'm coming last at the picnic. I'm coming last at. That's when you realized
Actually,
it.
yeah, it was fighting games. It was
That's
It was the last year of basketball and fighting games. It was those two events because they happened very close in proximity to each other. So my friends were playing Guilty Gear. I didn't have a console because my parents didn't want to buy me video games. We'll probably cover that in this episode. Along with basketball, almost getting in the last year because I practiced a lot. I realized I'm like, okay, if I really practice at things, things really happen for me because as much like there's a big deficit, they can count on me as a shooter. Probably wouldn't have been if I made it on the fully was on the team. I probably wouldn't have been a starter, but they probably would bring me out to just shoot threes. I'd be one of those players. With that being said, so when we were younger in high school and we were playing Guilty Gear, I didn't have a console practice. And like I said, if I don't have like the console and the platform and so on and so forth, the resources to learn the game, I'm not going to do on the game. So I remember at one point, my best man, my wedding Shahid, he called me the guinea pig of the group. He was like, "You're the guy that we all practice our combos on because we know we're not going to lose no matter how bad we drop our combos and how bad we play."
Ouch.
Yo, us guys, we're savages when we're young, man. And it was true. Like, there's nothing because I couldn't. I was trash. Like, literally, everyone would just pick random characters and still beat me. Like, that's how bad I was.
So you're reminded of the days where, okay, so goes back to I'm always picked last. I'm always shit at this.
It's the same. Like, when you get to a certain point, like in your 20s, especially in your 30s, you realize certain things just kind of repeat themselves as cycles, and you just kind of adjust to it. You're just like, this is just the same thing like last time. It just has a different code. It's a different dance, but it's the same dance, but a different song. That's all it is. You just got to adjust to the new tune. So when that Guilty Gear came out, the new Guilty Gear, this is Accent Core back in like 2008, 2007, 2008. I made sure. So fun fact for those that don't know, one of the reasons I also relate to Rock Lee and also to a lesser extent Deku is I had back surgery. I actually had a major surgery in my life. So family like gave money in because like, oh, this guy, like that's when it was around leading up to my surgery. That's when my dad's perspective on me changed because before he used to see me as like this whiny kid sometimes. There was a point where him and I weren't close between 12 and 16 because he has a nerdy son and no one had like he would defend me in front of family, but he definitely wasn't happy that his son was like this hypersensitive kid that didn't want to play in parks, didn't like getting scratched, and just wanted to play inside and play video games and draw. I was a sensitive African Caribbean son. Who wants that as a son, right? Who wants a sensitive boy who cries easily? So it was only when I was 16 when I got diagnosed with my scoliosis. I have like metal rods in my back now. That he realized exactly how much pain I was enduring because the doctor was saying like when your scoliosis hurts, when your scoliosis is active, it hurts to breathe. Yeah, it hurt to breathe for me. Like because your rib cage contracted and expand, especially after I play basketball. Okay, you didn't understand why I'd go and take a nap after basketball and basketball practice is because like I had so much pain, I had to sleep it off. He didn't know I was going through that much pain all these years. So that's when he realized how much work I put in and how much endurance I put myself through. And that's when he realized he had to really step up in terms of really making sure that he was really there for me to be as a resource for me because he didn't realize that. And I say that in the sense of going back on topic. So when I had my back surgery, family gave money. And, my parents didn't want to buy me a PlayStation. So I was like, cool, I just saved it. I'm really good with money. I actually saved up all the money that extended family and family gave me along with allowance. And I saved it for like about a year. I was able to buy a PlayStation 2 Slim. And then from there, I think I kept some of that money to buy it. And me and my friends, we all bought 2 copies of Guilty Gear Accent Core. When I got that copy, I practiced. I literally went into the basement and I practiced every day. This is back when I used to play on the PlayStation 2 remote. So I know this is a PS4, but it's pretty much the same thing as a PlayStation 2 remote. And I practiced the combos to the point where I broke my remote. Like that's how much I practiced. That's when YouTube became a thing. So I would watch the combo videos. I practiced all the games mechanics. I'd use all the mechanics. I'd use all the combos I saw the Japanese players use online. And then I would practice it like every day. I think every day I practiced for about 4 hours, roughly speaking, the combos and how to do the combos perfectly. So when we went over to one of my friends' places, he was getting ready. He was like, yo, I'm about to wipe the hope off this guy's face. That's what he said to me. And we played Guilty Gear, and he lost to me 20-5.
Ouch.
20-5. Like I still remember that day. He got so frustrated. I can't beat this guy. No matter what he did, he couldn't win because I practiced the combos to the point where I didn't drop anything. And then all of our other friends, I beat them as well to the point where they just stopped playing Guilty Gear. In fact, one of our friends, because Guilty Gear has like fatalities, I actually did a fatality on one of our friends. Right? One of our other friends, he told me not to do. I was like, no. You guys are gonna get all the work. You guys are gonna get all the smoke. That was the last time that other friend also played Guilty Gear as well, when I did the fatality on him. I was merciless. Like I said, that's the reason why I love Renji's fight with the superstar guy. Merciless. Take them out by any means.
Yep.
So yeah, no, those are the things. That's how I learned. Just one thing, and that just added, just like the basketball, and even just the school essay stuff. Those are the things that added towards helping me learn. Okay, well, there's another loss. It means I gotta really specialize, going back on Rock Lee or even Deku, understanding one for all, specializing in terms of understanding myself, this skill set, self-awareness, kind of what you said, and just building off of that every time. And then eventually I was like the best Guilty Gear player among our friends, and most of them just stopped playing because they couldn't beat me. And then that's what led to me going into esports and forming the Montreal scene. For those that don't know, that may care.
Destroy them completely. That reminds
I'm merciless.
that reminds me of Niccolo Machiavelli, what he wrote in The Prince, where he says, "You want to destroy your enemy to the point where they can't get revenge."
Yeah, basically, I was that. I would just I beat all of them until they stopped playing, and it's still the case now. I'm like, you're not gonna beat me in something. Just the same way as the guy got me to play Dragon Ball, I'm gonna beat you thoroughly. I will make sure I thoroughly eradicate you and end you to let you
And
know
you destroy the spirit.
I will destroy your spirit.
You know what? You know what's so interesting also is just thinking. I'm thinking about this now actually as I'm speaking, but is when you said the scoliosis. You're unable to breathe, but you still tried regardless. That reminds me of course, when Rock Lee was still he was training with a broken arm, and like it was hard for him to breathe, but he was still going. So that's very deep. That's very deep.
That's
I'm
how
in
I just kind of look
extreme
at
pain.
Rock Lee and Deku in terms of they're just built different. Like for like I'm looking at the show again, like, man, Deku is literally training all the time. Like they're both always practicing. Like, do you know what that's like? Like you always, like, you're looking at where they are now, where they're looking like Super Saiyan characters, like in the background here. For those that are watching this, but like for them to get to the Super Saiyan point, you know how much training they had to do, and that's something that always bothered me, is because people would kind of see me in this sort of figurative, when they see me as like at that Super Saiyan form, right? Like how we're seeing with Deku and Rock Lee in the background, when they'd see me like just completely decimate people in Guilty Gear or whatever it is, or they see me like with Deb and I, when they see like how Deb and I are really well connected and understand each other, or just where I'm at in terms of my career and stuff, it bothers me because people think I'm talented. And I'm like, don't ever I hate being called talented, to be honest with you.
Or like it happened overnight. They think it happened overnight.
It's the furthest thing that no, I get called talented typically. Like people just like, oh, this guy's just so amazing. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, do you know how much work I had to put in? Do you know what it's like in terms of fighting game?
But but think about it. That's still amazing. I know what you mean.
I hear that.
I know exactly what you're saying. But I think that you're seeing it as, well, it's not amazing if you put in the work. I think that's the position you're having in the situation. But regardless, I think the fact that you did put in that work, that amount of work, for a long period of time, and you were consistent and determined to put in that much work, I think that's amazing.
I can acknowledge it. I wouldn't say, okay, that's a good point. I think I don't want to. No, that's what it is. I don't want to be seen as amazing.
Okay, now the question becomes why.
Why? I'm just like everybody else. If you put in the work in something, and whether it's a fighting game or whatever, if you really put in the work, you can make things happen for yourself too. You just have to want to put in the work.
Okay, so I think I have a theory behind this. Is the idea you don't want to be seen as amazing is because then you feel like I have nothing else to prove because now I'm amazing? Or is it the idea that you have this unrealistic expectation of me, where you think that I did this extremely fast and I didn't have to work as hard and it just came to me?
It's more of the latter.
Okay.
I want people to know, like, no matter what are the things I do or the things I've done great in my life, you can do the same thing in your own ways. I'm not different from you. In the words of like Mob Psycho, I'm not special. I'm just like everybody else. I'm a little bit different. I'm a little bit an exception to the rule in certain regards. But even when you're the exception to the rule, you're just on a different lane. You're still on the highway.
I think, I think it is special. And I'll tell you why. Because you know what? Let me take the most obvious comparison here. So if you were to take someone like, I don't know, like Steph Curry, right, and you look at his 3 point capability, if you were to tell him exactly, well, you're amazing, you're so special, he's gonna be like, no, I just work extremely hard.
I think I know where you're going with this. Go on.
And do you see what I'm saying? Like in his position, he may not see that as special or amazing because that's the amount of work he put into his craft. That's just second nature to him. You know, it's just like breathing, right? This is what he does.
Mhm.
But when you really analyze his skill sets and exactly that amount of work that he put into, that is amazing. And the reason it becomes amazing is because you put in so many hours to the point where you exceed just conventional means. That's my perspective on why it's amazing. So in your case, the reason why I think it's amazing is because you didn't put just 10 hours of work into becoming good. You put in far more. You put in more than 10,000 hours of work to become amazing.
I
So
see how you chose 10,000. I see what you did there. Go on.
yeah, so exactly. So the way I measure amazing is putting in way like more, of course, more than 10,000 hours of work, while still being determined and willing to improve at it. So I think that's what makes someone amazing.
I can admit, like in terms of certain aspects, in terms of wanting to do certain things, I'm built different in terms of how I see things. But I avoid seeing myself as better. I think the work I do is amazing, and I'm very grateful for it. And because I've had to work hard for a
Yeah,
lot of those things, I'd say almost all those things, I'm very grateful
yeah,
because I've had to put in that work. I'm like, man, like I can look back on, and that's self awareness too, in the sense of looking back on, like, how well I play Guilty Gear, or how well I work now, or the type of work I'm in. I'm very grateful for it. Or even like this podcast stuff. There's a lot of, like, the amount of YouTube I've watched
hmm
and podcasts I've watched, crazy for me to get to this point. Even if like we haven't built the traction as of yet. No, like there's a lot of work I've just put in. Like, even once again, like the podcast wasn't doing well. And so I was like, okay, well, let's do what we did in Guilty Gear. Let's do what we did in basketball. Let's do what we did in school. Let's just do it all over again. It's no different. It's the same process. Let's just watch, practice, learn, absorb information, as much information as possible, and then we're going to start doing, and then we're just going to build off of it, and then eventually I'm going to figure out the ways that work for me. So like I said, in terms of like fighting games, I practice while I work. In terms of school, I don't do well in exams, so I did really well in the assignments and the papers. In basketball, I wasn't very athletic, so I learned how to do 3 pointers. And I think that goes back into your point about Steph Curry. And I'd even want to throw in Tom Brady. That man does not have the body of an athlete, but he's been playing football for so long. He's the greatest football player, arguably one of the best football players of all time.
yeah,
Steph Curry changed the basketball game. He's not athletic at all. He's definitely no LeBron James. But as you said, they put in amazing work, and they have an amazing work ethic. And I think that's what comes down to, just having that amazing work ethic to want to like be great at something. Not be great, but just be great at something. Be good at something that you can be proud of.
yeah, exactly. And of course, if I was to relate this back again to Naruto, is again with Rock. I'll be on. I speak of Rock Lee a lot because again, he's also my favorite character, and he definitely spoke to me the
Copycat.
most. Actually, no, actually, before you told me Rock Lee was your favorite, remember what I told you? I told you my favorite character was Rock Lee.
Yeah, for sure. I know. I wasn't surprised when you said Rock Lee.
Yeah. So, no, again, so the reason I'm gonna relate this back to Naruto, I feel like okay, I think that if anyone watched Naruto and they've seen Rock Lee work ethic, it's absolutely crazy, right? But I think that if we were able to speak to Rock Lee and ask him, "Are you amazing?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
I doubt that he's going to say he's amazing. I highly doubt it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But you cannot disagree that what he's doing is amazing. So it goes back to my point where I feel like people who are just so competent at what they do, they don't tend to see themselves as amazing because this is what they do, and they always find themselves as I can always be better.
I
But
would
then
challenge that because there's also people like Sasuke who, because they didn't have to work at it, they do think they're great. I challenge that. So I would argue in a sense of people, because it's the same thing going back on Deku too. One of the reasons why um, he has such humility having one for all is because he was given the opportunity. He had to work for it. He had to like. There was a like. I think we were talking about it. There's a really good quote that All Might said to him. It was, "Luck is different from being acknowledged for an opportunity." Because oftentimes, Deku feels like he's lucky to get it. It's like, no, you have to work for it, and from that working for it, you value it much more. You have much more gratitude towards it. And when you have to work towards something, just like anything else in life, you have much more gratitude towards it. Versus like if you have someone like a Sasuke or someone, and I would even like at the top of my head parallel him to Bakugo, who's like, no, I'm just good. I'm just sick with it. And
I'm definitely gonna challenge you on the Sasuke part.
No, but like here's what I'm gonna go at, and I think you're not that far. You might not have seen it Naruto yet. Both Bakugo and Sasuke don't take losses very well initially, at the very least, because they're not used to losing. Versus Rock Lee is just like, yo, it's a loss. I can't use my arm, and my leg right now, but I'm gonna go back and work out. I'm gonna go back and work out. This is nothing new. This is par for the course. I'm used to taking L's. This is another L. Time to work on this, so I'm going to learn from this L. I'm going to build off of it. There's times that Deku loses to it, and I think back, I don't want to spoil anything. I'm like, I don't recall Deku having emotional breakdown from taking L's. Unless, obviously someone's life was in danger and you couldn't save them. Obviously, that's a different conversation. But in terms of, like, Deku taking L's, Deku's like, yo, I've been taking L's like my whole life. Like, what is this? How is this any different? I'm a bag full of L's, right? And that's something that I both love about both those characters. Just like, yo, I've been losing. The fact that I even won one, wow, congrats to me. Why am I upset?
I think that people who tend to lose themselves after losses display a high level of arrogance to begin with. So let me challenge you with the Sasuke part. So the interesting thing about Sasuke is that actually, I truly believe he never thought. I think he thinks he's smart, but I don't think that he thinks that he's amazing. He always thinks that he's lacking because he's part of this amazing clan.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So special clan. Go on.
Yeah, so he's part of this special clan, and not only that, he looks up to his brother. Again, for the viewer, for the listener at home, I'm only on episode 60, so I don't know exactly how he acts afterwards. I feel like he probably changes. But so far, what I'm seeing is that, he knows that he's smart. He knows that he's competent. But he doesn't. I don't think that he thinks that he's amazing himself. I think that he thinks that he's part of an amazing clan, right? I think that he thinks that he's part of an amazing family, that he needs to prove himself. Like he's always comparing himself to his older brother, right? Because he doesn't think he himself is that amazing. He thinks that his brother's amazing. So it goes back to my
talk about those things. Go on.
Yeah, so it goes back to my point that oftentimes people who put long hours of work, who are determined, who are extremely competent, they often don't view themselves as amazing, and that's because, of course, for many reasons, right? They always think they can improve themselves, or what they tend to do is that they compare themselves to other people who not far exceeds them, but exceeds them to a certain extent. So when we look at Rock Lee, right, we know Rock Lee's amazing, but he thinks that he still has to improve himself because he's looking at Neji, he's looking at Naruto, he's looking at Sasuke, and he's like, well, these
I would
guys.
word it differently. I would say he's looking at Guy, but go on.
Yeah, so he's looking at these guys and he's looking at their skill sets. He's like, look, I know that I still have to put in the work.
Improvement.
Yeah, exactly. I know that I still have to put in way more work than these guys because I don't have the jitsu that they possessed. So despite the fact that he is amazing, but it's so interesting because throughout the whole show, throughout the whole 60 episodes, I have yet to come, except for Naruto, because of course he's highly naive. But aside from Naruto and people who display high level of arrogance, no one have ever said that they were amazing themselves. I am amazing.
Keep watching for Sasuke. You're on. Have you seen Sasuke's second round match in the Chunin exams?
No. So he just beat it. No, did he beat Gaara yet? Don't tell. Hold on. Give me a second.
That's his second match.
Gaara is the second match, right?
Yeah.
No, Gaara is the first one because that's when he arrived late. Who was his first one?
His first one I can't remember, but he did the line combo. The sound guy, he did the line combo against him. Remember, he was already suffering from the curse seal. That was his first match, and he like copied.
No. Gaara is the first one because I don't remember that scene.
I remember Naruto. I remember Sasuke's trying to resist the curse seal, and he did a lion combo and took the guy out, and then like subsequently collapsed. And then that's when Kakashi was watching Rock Lee's fight versus Gaara, and then that's when
you're speaking of okay. So the first one you were right. You're right. Oh, so yeah, I'm speaking about the second
second round.
The second round.
When you watch that, you'll see what I mean in terms of when you're really good, you're not used to losing. Versus like I said, Deku, Rock Lee, and now
he loses.
No, I'm not gonna say he loses. But he doesn't lose. It expands. Like you're gonna see. That's the way to word it. You're gonna see an inferiority complex from Sasuke.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, that goes back to my point, right? So yeah, they feel inferior. They feel inferior to other people because it's like, despite they themselves being amazing,
he does take some losses though. He takes some losses from someone that you haven't seen yet. So the losses that he goes through, because like I said, Rock Lee spends his whole life. Deku spends their whole lives taking L's. Like, yo, it's another L. It's whatever. Back to drawing board, right?
Yeah.
But for Sasuke, because he's not used to L's and he's used to getting A pluses, when he gets a D, he's like, "What do you mean? How did I get a D? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
How did I fail? How did I lose? What are you trying to say?" And so that creates the inferiority complex because he's like, I don't lose. This doesn't make sense to me, because that's not part of his I guess you could call it internal narrative, versus, like I said, Deku and Rock Lee, they're like, yeah, I lose all the time. So like if I win, great. If I lose, that's par for the course. So I something I'm used to learning. They've lost so much. They've learned to learn from. They've lost so much. They've learned to learn from their losses.
Exactly.
But for someone that's like I said, Baku, he was really pissed off about losing, and there's a couple other times that he's going to take L's where he's going to be like, what do you mean I lost? I don't understand. It took him, just like I'm talking about Sasuke without going to spoiler territory.
Mm-hmm.
It took them getting a number of L's before like, yo, I actually need to go back to the drawing board. I can't just keep doing this. I'm used to just doing it and it works. So it doesn't work. I don't know what to do. Versus Rock Lee and Deku, I'm used to Deku gets beat up by Baku all the time. Rock Lee took so many L's from Neji. So when they take another L, I was like, okay, well, this is just what I'm used to. So I'm gonna practice again because clearly this is not working. I'm so used to L's, I have to go back to drawing board at the time. So it's just me going back to drawing board. Same thing in terms of like whether it's my work or whatever. I'm so used to taking L's, I like just back to drawing board. Black Nerd Talk's not doing well, back to the drawing board. My workplace not appreciating me, whatever, or me having a hard time in my workplace, back to the drawing board. I'm having a hard time with combos and I'm not doing well in tournaments, back to the drawing board. I'm having, even in terms of when I play new games, like the first like couple hours, I'm really bad at the game. I don't know if I ever talked to you about this, but the first hour or two in the game, it takes me a long time to learn mechanics, so I die a lot. Once I get past the 2-hour mark, I don't really die anymore.
But my point is, no, I completely understand what you're saying, and I actually agree with it. I think that the reason why I think that Sasuke knows that he's gifted to a certain extent, but I don't think that he sees himself as I'm amazing, because he has I may see.
You'll see.
Yeah, but I don't think that he thinks that he's amazing because he has this inferior complex towards his brother. So
no, but that's why that could also play as to why he has it, is like, if I'm so amazing, so I should be better than him, but I'm not. So how do I reconcile these two things? Everyone tells me I'm amazing, but then my brother's better. So what does that mean?
Which is why he doesn't believe that he is.
You'll see. You'll see. And that's the sort of thing I mean in terms of just reconciling.
Yeah, I may, you know what? I may be wrong. I'm open to being wrong, because this is exactly how I get to improve my critical thinking skills. So I really don't mind being wrong.
I'd love for us to come back to this conversation, maybe like part 2 of Naruto and Hero Academy.
Because remember, what I'm judging Sasuke off
is based off where you're at right now.
It's exactly where I'm at. I'm just 60 episodes in. You're right. I may have a different position. Who knows, right? Or I may have an even stronger position. So
No, but to be honest with you,
see.
having this conversation helped me understand Sasuke as a character more, because there's, like I said, the inferiority complex that he's gonna have moving forward. It helped me understand as to why like Rock Lee and Naruto stayed the same, because they're like, yo, and even like I said, Bakugo, like, it's like I'm used to losing. Like this is whatever. This is what I'm used to. This is my everyday life. I'm a bag of L's. W's, what's that? I got two W's.
No, Rock Lee and Naruto. I'm gonna say at the core, I'm gonna say that it's very different. I'm not gonna say that Naruto is used to losing. I don't think at his core that's exactly his motivation. I think that his motivation is the fact that he's been isolated. He's been treated as a black sheep of society.
But he has that one person, Iruka Sensei. Go on.
Exactly, but he thinks that this is the reason why he's arrogant, right? So he needs that attention because he's been that black sheep. He's not getting attention. He doesn't even. I don't even think he has a parent. I don't even think he has parents.
Iruka Sensei is his parent. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I haven't even like his biological parents. I haven't even seen them. So it's like, so what happens when a child doesn't have attention at home, right? So they're gonna do anything possible at school to try to get that attention.
For sure.
So that I feel like that's his core motivation. That's the reason why he acts so
for sure.
nauseous. Yeah. So
that's why I didn't really want to. Sorry for jumping. That's the reason I didn't want to include Naruto in this conversation. I want to focus more on Deku and Rock Lee. But in terms of Naruto, I was just talking about specifically being able to take L's. Like Naruto can take L's. I'd say arguably as well as Deku and Rock Lee, because he's so used to his whole life of taking L's. So when he does it, and he's like, "I got a W."
Oh, Naruto, that's debatable too. I don't know if his behavior changed later on. If when he becomes a teenager, he matures a bit more. But so far, I don't think so.
Keep watching. Keep watching.
Yeah, keep watching. Right?
He can take an L. Obviously, I would say I would put that's like I said. There's a reason why I wanted the focus more to be on Deku and Rock Lee. They lose a lot. They learned that. They learned very like think about that. Like obviously, yes, Naruto can be brought into this conversation too, but these two, because of their deficits, they had to realize I'm not the same as everybody else. Like that's very challenging to realize at a very young age, and then to be like, I have to change the way in which I go about life very differently from my peers if I want to succeed. And my peers also don't think I'm going to succeed. When Deku got admitted to UA, everyone laughed at him.
Yeah.
And what happened was when Rock Lee said he wanted to be a ninja, everyone laughed at him. They're like, "You succeed? Are you crazy?"
Okay. Okay, so I think the fundamental motivation behind the two characters is pretty similar. I think that you're right. I think that reason is that they have this crazy belief in themselves. So I think that's similar. But I think in terms of their experience for their motivation is completely different.
I can agree with you on that. I just talk about like their motivation. But I think to kind of
I think their motivation is completely different though.
Yeah. No. So what did you say? You said that they're you're saying their drive, their willingness to keep going, right? I think that's what you're saying. Yeah. I agree.
So
for so many people, sorry, before you go, for so many people, like there's very few people who keep going when everyone laughs at you for majority of your life. And who like, yo, the doctor's like, yo, honestly, I think you should give up on your dreams. Like imagine hearing that at 4. Yeah,
that's and you don't have much willpower to even make a decision at 4. It's like
what?
You're just gonna listen to what the adults say.
Like the doctor's like, yeah, I looked at your X-rays, bro. Give up. You're better off giving up. Damn. And then 100%. But yeah, you were saying in terms of motivations. Go on.
Yeah. So let me start with the belief system. So I think that, especially in the beginning, that Deku has a way stronger belief system than Rock Lee. Imagine being because I see it like this. Imagine being so young. You're 4 years old and you know exactly what you want to be, right? You're told by professionals at 4 years old, by professionals that no, you can't be a hero. But then yet you still go around. Yes, of course, you're discouraged, but you still turn around and say, I'm still going to be a hero. At a very young age. I mean, and now imagine if that happened to Rock Lee at 3-4 years old. That listen, you cannot be a ninja. It's not that he was never told. He was told that he couldn't do.
True, he wasn't explicitly told. It's true.
Exactly. He wasn't specifically told that he couldn't be a ninja. He said, "Well, you can't do those type of jitsus." But it
Right.
doesn't mean that he couldn't be a ninja. And he was like, okay, if I can't do that, then technically I could still be a ninja if I just did taijutsu.
True. They didn't.
So
they just said his taijutsu was subpar. It's true.
yeah, so in terms of the belief system, I think that Deku had a way stronger belief system. I think that he just believed in himself way more than Rock Lee did, in the beginning, of course, right? Because he had absolutely no possibility of being a hero.
Yeah. In addition to no one believing in him, he was also told to give up. This is true.
And his mother came to him, started crying. Imagine being a kid, you're 4 years old, your mother's coming to you. You've been told by a professional you couldn't do it. Now your mother's crying to you, saying, "I'm sorry, you can't be a hero." It's like, how can you believe in yourself afterwards? You can't. It's literally impossible, emotionally impossible. So I think that in terms of belief system, definitely Deku had a way stronger. He believed in himself way more than Rock Lee. But in terms of motivation and realistically speaking of what one can do, if someone was to look at Rock Lee and Deku, in terms of achieving one goal, which one was possible? Because remember what Lord Hakagu said. He said, "Choose a goal that's possible to attain." Do you remember that? That you sent me that clip. Lord Hokage, I think was it the third
Hokage, right?
The third, yeah. So remember when you sent me that clip?
Hokage, yeah.
That was so powerful. By the way, I don't want to switch topic here, but it kind of like made me reassess whether or not I want to pursue a second degree when you sent me that clip. Can you imagine anime making me do that?
That's why we have these conversations, man. Yo, this stuff has a big impact. Like Rock Lee really showed me, and like, yo, like these L's don't define you. Just keep going. And same thing with Deku. These L's don't define you. Keep going.
Yeah, so definitely, man, shout out to you for that. No, but anyways, going back to my point. So in terms of if I was a listener if I was a viewer and I was watching Deku and Rock Lee, and which one in terms of motivation, right? Like which one is attainable, realistically speaking? I'm gonna go with Rock Lee. Because Rock Lee taijutsu is basically martial arts when you really look at it. Whereas Deku, he was given the power, and that's not realistically. I mean, that can't happen in the real world. Someone can't just cut off a piece of hair and make you eat it, and then you have superpower. Like that's not realistically.
It can. I can give you examples. In
real life, you're telling me that if you had superpower.
So we're talking about if we're talking about literal superpowers, then obviously Rock Lee's also not realistic because he's opening chakra gates and going Super Saiyan and jumping off walls.
No. But remember, his taijutsu itself. Let's take away the Super Saiyan.
That's what I'm talking about. If we're going to be very literal, I'll go very literal. Also, Rock Lee's not realistic, but I would say I do agree.
That ability is not realistic.
Hold on, but I do agree with you.
Yeah.
In a sense of the likelihood of someone passing something on to you is very unlikely, but it can happen. You can have a mentor who passes on the business to you. You can have a mentor or a father figure who passes on, like I said, the business to you, the trust fund, whatever it is, and so you can build off it when you really couldn't do it on your own. Those things happen too.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying now. So you're making a case of basically it's one of those philosophical analogies you're making, but I'm trying to speak on a biological real life situation. So for example, taijutsu, yes, you're right, I can't go Super Saiyan, but it doesn't mean I can't become a professional MMA fighter. Like that's attainable if I just work hard, but I can't become All Might. I can't have the superpower of All Might because he's flying in the air.
Though.
It's
a superpower anime. It's a super. You're taking a fictional form of martial arts to a real form of martial arts, and then you're comparing superheroes, and there's no equal comparison because it's superheroes. It's not a fair comparison. You'd have to find equivalent comparison, which is why I gave the one about a business. It's because he's passing on his powers. It's the equivalent of like passing on like whatever resource you have to someone else. But for taijutsu, it's also not realistic. So yeah, you can make taijutsu in terms of martial arts, that makes sense. But equally, you can also do the same thing in terms of a superpower, in terms of being passed on to something else, in terms of resources, because that's essentially what Alma passed on, his resources. he passed on to the next generation. But to say like, no, this is this because it's martial arts and this is not because it's not an equal or fair comparison.
Now, I understand exactly what you're saying, but remember, this is my point.
Mm-hmm.
If I was a viewer, right,
Mm-hmm.
and I was to look at Rock Lee and I was
Mm-hmm.
to look at Deku,
Mhm.
which one is more of a relatable character
Mhm.
based on exactly what they want to try to
Okay, so
pursue?
you're talking about in terms of diligence and Guy training Rock Lee to get to this point versus All Might, quote unquote, simply passing on all for one, sorry, one
Passing.
for all to Deku. Yeah, you're right. That's
Yeah, so
absolutely right.
yeah, so exactly. So if I was a viewer and I look at it, and then I'm able to relate more with Rock Lee than I am with Deku because I see that okay, you know what, like this guy is basically doing MMA. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. Yeah, he wants Super Saiyan. That's not realistic, but mostly at the core, he's doing MMA, and he's working extremely hard at doing that,
Mhm.
and that looks relatable.
I would
Personally, to
also
me,
argue you're also missing out the point that Rock Lee had to do a lot of intense training to get to that point.
yeah. But what I'm saying is those intense training is exactly what MMA fighters are doing. Of course,
Which
not
is
to
which is what Deku did. Like you
now.
forget the all American dream training that he had to go through. And I say that in the sense of when I don't know if you ever looked at the YouTube comments for when All Might said you can become a hero. The
Yeah.
comment section have people crying because they're saying that's all they need is someone to tell them, so they can keep going and keep pushing. So that's
Yeah,
all Deku, and that's also one of the main things that to add to it. That's one of the main things I loved about All Might and Might Guy, in a
Mhm.
sense of as much as Rock Lee and Deku were training, they weren't doing it very well.
Mhm.
They sucked. Like, and that's something I had to learn. Like, just because you're practicing doesn't mean you're practicing well. They had to have someone train them to get to where they are. Where Rock Lee can inherit one for all, because otherwise he would have died. You've seen him punch before. If he didn't do all that physical training, he would have died. And then Rock Lee had to get to a point where you could learn to open the gates. It took a lot of like intense, intentional training for to get to this point. I wouldn't say, yeah, I would 100% agree with you. It's definitely not the same because, like I said, it was passed on versus everything completely passed on for Deku versus completely being taught to Rock Lee. But there's a lot of similarities in terms of them having to be intentional training and having that one person showing them how to do what they need to do to get to the point where they have to, because they have those deficits that they have.
Okay, cool. So we can agree when it comes to attaining their goal that Rock Lee is much more realistic. Now let's speak about training.
Realistic, I'd say different. Well, go on.
To the viewer watching that, I'll be honest, but we can agree to disagree on this.
It could be for you. It could be for you. But
no, just in general. Just in general. But anyways, when it comes to training, now let's speak about specifically training. Their training they both had to do.
Sorry, if I could jump in, I do want to add a point. It's also relatable to me specifically. Okay. So just as it's not relatable for you, it's relatable for me because when my dad became sick, because of all the hard work I put in, all the training that he gave me, similar to how Deku inherited all for one, I inherited my dad's resources. But if I wasn't ready, he wouldn't have given them to me. To be very honest with you, I know he wouldn't have, because I would have just squandered and ruined the family. But because of what he did for me, he gave it on to me. Specifically, especially, the car I drive. I don't know if I ever told you this. I inherited it from him. It was originally his car.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave that to me because of what I've done for the family and me proving myself all these years. So I never had to get a quote unquote a new car. He handed it to me. But even for me, just like Deku, I didn't feel deserving of the car. I think you remember, like, well, you see a lot more in season 2, but Deku doesn't feel it deserving for all, for majority of the show, because he's like, I was given to me. But the same thing that All Might said, luck is different from opportunity earned. It's something I even had to do in therapy in terms of feeling I'm deserving of what was given to me. Because that's obviously a thing that we can also struggle through within life, is that sometimes we imposter syndrome. Sometimes we feel we're undeserving of our success or the things that come to us. But go on, back to you.
No, so again, I completely understand what you're saying, but I think that I think we can agree with if I was a viewer, I'm going to make this point again, but if I was a viewer again, the path Rock Lee chose just seems way realistic than the path Deku chose. Now let's talk about the power that was given to him. right? Because you're making a case of an analogy here. When I'm making a simple case of literally, like, the real world experience. But let's talk about the analogy part. Okay, so I still don't think that Deku was deserving of the power. He was unable to control it in the beginning.
For that, just like the Sasuke part, you have to keep watching for that one. That one you have to see. But I
because
definitely
because in your
go on.
case it was a perfect situation where it was given to you at the right time, right moment. Whereas, remember what All Might said: I'm giving you this power, but you're not able to. I know you're not able to control it. Uh, Even if you were to do the 10 months training, you still won't be able to control it. Do you remember that?
Of course.
Yeah. So in my case, even then,
So
when he was given the power, I don't think that
when I got the car,
he was
I
deserving
actually
of
had
it.
like 3 different minor car accidents with it because I wasn't ready for it. It
Okay.
took time. Like I said, I think so. Here's my main disagreement with you. You're saying you as a viewer, you don't find it relatable. I can definitely respect that. But to say like viewers
No,
can't,
no, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Mhm,
this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm
mhm,
saying. Okay. Let's remove let's remove all the
mhm,
fictional aspect of the, like, the
mhm.
superpower. Like,
Yeah.
let's eat this
Mhm,
hair and you're gonna get superpower. And let's
mhm.
remove Rock Lee Super
Going
Saiyan.
Super Saiyan. Yeah.
Okay, so let's remove those two aspects of the show. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know it won't make sense because the show is fictional to begin with. So
Right.
I completely understand. But what I'm saying is this. This is my point. If I was a viewer and I said, okay, which one am I able to relate to the
So that's
most?
where I disagree with you. But go on.
Okay, which one am I able to relate to the most?
Mhm,
Okay, so a person, now remember, this is no analogy. Like, literally look at it like this. I'm looking at this very literal, right? So
mhm,
you have Deku here, never really done any training until, like, he was given that power, right? He did
mhm.
no training, but just because he did 10 months of training, he thought he was deserving of it. Anyways, whatever.
Go on. There's two points I'll disagree with you on now. Go on.
And then, All Might says, you know what? Do 10 months of training, and then I'm gonna give you my power, whatever, given the power. Or you have this person here who has been training since they were 3 4 years old,
Mhm,
every single day. Let me do 200 push-ups, let me do 500 punches, let me do 100 kicks,
mhm.
since the age of, I don't know,
1,000.
god, how long, that, yeah, like 5 or
Mhm,
6 years old,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Kept working, kept working, kept
mhm,
working, kept working,
mhm,
never stopped,
mhm,
felt doubted, been told
mhm,
he's not a ninja, whatever.
mhm,
To me personally, in terms of work ethic, when I just look
mhm,
at these two characters,
mhm.
I'm able to relate more with Rock Lee than I am with Deku, because
That's
Deku didn't
fine. I
start.
agree with you on that.
And I think majority of the people,
That's where
major,
I disagree with you.
and that's fine.
So, okay, so
I think,
here's
hold on, let me
go on.
finish my
Finish. Finish.
point.
Finish.
Let me finish my point.
Okay.
I think that majority of the people will be
Mhm,
able to relate with Rock Lee
mhm,
than Deku, because
mhm,
when you look at anything, like, let's say for example, any interest that someone is willing to do, whether it's rollerblading, skateboarding, basketball, soccer, they know, especially if you want to do it at a very high competitive level, they know you have to start off somewhere and you have to fight really hard, right?
mhm,
You don't just wake up when you're 12 years old like
mhm,
Deku.
mhm,
I'm going to train for 10 months and then I'm going to be given this power here. No,
mhm,
what's going to happen is it's going to be like a Rock Lee situation. I'm not saying you're going to start at 2 or 3 years old, but you're
mhm,
definitely going to start, you're going to start somewhere, right? You're going to start probably, I don't know, like 9 7 years old, especially if this
mhm,
is your calling, this is extremely your passion. And
mhm,
then you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer. You're going to work hard. You're going to be determined. You're going to practice, like exactly what you told me with the video game,
mhm.
until you're extremely good at it.
Okay.
Something was not just given to you in order for you to be good at it.
Okay.
You worked. It was blood, sweat, and tear. It was
Mhm,
all your effort. Yes, you got some assistance.
mhm,
You got guidance, but it was
mhm.
still your effort. You still had to
Okay.
show up. Whereas,
Okay.
for example, example,
Go on.
Deku,
Mm-hmm.
Deku, what did
Mm-hmm.
he do? Well,
Okay.
let me just write this book, right? Okay, let me
Okay.
just analyze people's skills. He
Mhm.
never had to run a mile
Okay. All right. Now I'm gonna jump in.
he was like
Now I'm gonna
12,
jump in.
13 years old.
Okay. So now I'm gonna jump in. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
here's my 3 points I'm gonna disagree on. So first point,
yeah,
um, there's nothing. So this is you're projecting how you feel about those two characters onto a mass audience. There's no way you can confirm, especially with, like I said, looking at upvotes of like 5,000 people saying Deku's story has such a big impact on my life.
no, and you know what? You're
So
completely right. I'm just making an
exactly. So there's
outlandish statement.
yeah,
That
it's
sounds
perfectly fine.
true. That sounds true. That most likely sounds true, but we don't know whether or not it's true.
So, but that's what I'm saying. You're projecting like this is what you're saying is for me, like viewers will feel this way. No, you as your own viewer feel that way about these two characters. And that's perfectly fine. Everyone has different things about both characters, right? Perfectly fair. I can't tell you how to feel one way about a character or another.
Yeah, but yeah, the way I the way I break it down, realistically
The other,
speaking,
hold on.
yeah,
Other point being, I literally just said Deku doesn't feel good about having those powers, and it's something that I related to in a sense of earning something and getting something. And one could even say, even in terms of training, like that's the same way as One for All was passed on to him. Knowledge is
yeah,
still passed through. It's the same thing for me in terms of like my handyman skills or whatever. Even like when I had like the top one of the top Blaze Blue players train me in Blaze Blue. His name is Spark. He passed on knowledge. One could say that's very similar to how One for All was passed on. I won't go into that so much because that's more of my way of thinking and processing information.
yeah.
The last point being is this like you're judging. You've done this before because you also did this when we were talking about Naofumi. You judge You judge characters too critically before seeing their story played out fully. We did this with Naofumi in a sense. Like, why is this guy crying? Like, what's wrong with this guy? And then you saw him developing. You're like, yo, I actually respect this character. You did
No,
this.
this case is different because I'm judging the beginning. I'm not judging.
That's what I'm saying. You're also judging this. That was the beginning of Naofumi's story. I'm saying you're also doing the same thing at Deku. You only watched the first season. You haven't seen Deku actually runs miles to learn how to use One for All because he can't do it. Because even after All Might trained him, he still has to go back and diligently train. Like that's what I kind of alluded to it, but I don't want to spoil the show for you so much. Every day, this character's training. Like even when he's studying, he's lifting weights.
No, listen, I'm not saying ever since he got the power, he's not training anymore. I'm not saying that. But when he never got the power, he never trained.
He didn't know how to train. The same thing with Rock Lee. Neither of them were training efficiently. Yeah, Rock Lee was physically training, but Rock Lee wasn't doing great in school. Deku was doing good in school, but he didn't have the body for it. If anything, they're like inverse of each other. But
now let me ask you this: who are you able to connect with most?
Equally, to be honest with you. When I watched, I'm actually surprised I'm actually okay doing this episode, but when I watched the first 4 episodes of is it the first? No, the first 2 episodes. The first 2 episodes of Hero Academia, and I watched episode. For me, I think it's a bit different with how they have it on Crunchyroll. Rock Lee's fight 40, 49, and 50. I cry. Like I literally, I get waterworks. I told you about that. I'm actually surprised I didn't cry at all for this episode. And then even there's a point that I wanted to bring up in season 4. Deku has this scene with All Might, and I didn't expect it coming, but it spoke on my experience with my dad and why he wants to live for me. And that scene also made me very emotional. Like both characters make me very emotional, and I don't get emotional from characters. And then the other character, I think I told you, the other character that made me emotional was Erwin Smith. His final speech, so basically anything that reminds me of my dad gets me emotional. Anything that reminds me of my dad, it's waterworks for me because he means so much to me, and I see him go through so much in his life. So anytime that anyone reminds me of them, I'm like, here we go again, about to cry. Damn,
that's actually so beautiful.
Thank you. I hate it though because sometimes I can't. I'm just like, I'm not trying to watch this episode. I'm gonna get the waterworks. I'm not ready for that. But no, I definitely understand how both characters. I would see even more controversially, Deku can be understandable how one can relate to him. But I definitely say no. He's put in the work, and you see it throughout the series, and that's
Well,
something
absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
something that like I respect when they both, like I said, they basically both go Super Saiyan.
No,
Um,
no, absolutely. Even finishing season one, you see him. He's always put in the work. I see
yeah,
that.
no, it gets even
Ever,
more like
ever since he got the power, he's been putting in work like crazy.
it's different. It's different from like you really see it. That's how I would say it. Season 2, you really see it. You really see the because and that's what I really liked about it is the fact that he got it, but his body couldn't handle it, so he still
Hmm.
has to work hard. It wasn't just because it would have diminished for me. Would have diminished the series if he was just like out the gate Super Saiyan like Rock Lee is at when we first see him fight, right? It wouldn't be the
Yeah.
same. But the fact that he had to build up to it once again to be able to get to this point, it shows that like even when you get something, you still have to work at it diligently over and over. You don't just how would I word this? Things in life don't come to you easy. Even opportunities, they don't come to you easy. You gotta work at it every day. And
Yeah, no, no, I know he worked. Ever since he got the power, he worked extremely hard. I see it.
yeah. So no, I think this would be a great I think we definitely have to have another part 2 for this in terms of Deku and Rock Lee. The conversation when it comes to them and how we feel about them, especially as you're gonna see Rock Lee keep going in the series in terms of Deku as well. It's very interesting to see them grow as characters versus the where they are at the beginning and just no one believing them, as you said. Rock Lee, I would say, is also borderline delusional, to be honest with you. To be like, for the doctor to be like, no, you can't, and you be like, no, I'm still gonna do it. Like, bro, the doctor said you can't. Like, get another job. That's crazy. And like I said, just having that one person who believes in you. But there was a little thing I wanted to talk to you about before we ended this. You
Hmm.
felt that All Might would die after he, gives up his powers. And you're talking about just, yeah, I wanted you to kind of talk about that. I feel like that was a really interesting aspect to talk about in the series.
Oh yeah, so this was just again. Remember, I still never watched. How many seasons are there of My
I think
Hero?
we're at
Like
season 6
six? Yeah. So this is probably like halfway through season one
now.
that I've watched.
Hmm.
I've noticed because now again, this is just mere speculation. I don't know
For
whether or
sure.
not he's actually going to die.
No, but I
But
think this is a good conversation point.
yeah, so the reason I thought he was going to die is because, so first of all,
That was funny.
My phone just randomly died. I was like, no, wow.
That's when I got to the juicy part.
Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah, you were saying about All Might and your speculation. I think this is a good conversation point, which is why I wanted to bring it up.
yeah, so yeah, in superheroes, of course, you always have this idea that we have to pass on, we have to create the new generation, we have to pass on our power to the new generation. So that's okay, so that's number one. That's when I realized. Number two was he was getting physically weaker.
Right.
He's saying, "Oh, I can't maintain this form
Form
anymore,
anymore.
like
Yep.
I could before." And he started
Right.
saying this, of course, ever since he gave the power away. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's number two. Number three, he was saying, "Okay, my stomach. I don't know if he had an
Yep.
ulcer, but he was having stomach
He lost a
problems."
lot of internal organs.
Yeah, so that. Okay, so I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, you know what's gonna happen? He's gonna have an organ failure or something like that. Something's gonna happen where then he passes away and Deku's All Might's power that he inherited becomes much stronger because of his passing, or something like that. So those three speculation alone, I saw. I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't know if the writers, getting prepared to just write this character off, but I think that he's going to pass away. And not only that, another one was, remember that cover art that you made? I think the background, the sky was like orange, reddish,
Are you talking about
yellow.
the thumbnail?
Yeah, the thumbnail you created.
Yeah.
So in that scene, so there's a scene that actually looked exactly like that, where he gives them a talk, and I think he speaks about how you have to believe in yourself or something like that, or I think it was the idea of responsibility, and it just sounded like, okay, you know what, this character's out, like we're getting prepared to just write him off. But anyways, it was those three main speculation that made me think that okay, yeah, he's out.
I think that's a really good. So the reason I wanted to bring that up, I think there's a really good conversation point, in the sense of, because you kind of brought up like why did Rockley and I keep going after we had our surgeries, our respective surgeries, and I remember Deku also did the same thing like after like one of his fights, like he had a busted arm, and he's like, "All right, time to do push-ups," and it's like, bro, you can't walk. What are you doing? I'm going to avoid going to spoiler territory without going into detail for you, because I want you to see it for yourself first. And I think there needs to be a conversation of us men valuing ourselves beyond our physical abilities and what we can do.
Interesting.
I think there's more than enough value that come from us, from our experience and the knowledge that we can pass on, more than what we can do for our physically and resource wise do for our families and our communities. And I think that gets lost a lot. I know that in many ways my dad learned to kind of, going back when we talked about one form passing on, my dad passed on a lot of responsibilities onto me in terms of like upkeeping when we used to live in the house. Now I'm in Toronto in a condo. But like, when it came to like, mowing the lawn and like removing the snow and things like that, I've seen how a lot of our fathers have kind of struggled to let go of those responsibilities because, those were the things that they were used to doing.
Yeah.
And so they try to do 25-year-old things when they're 55. And the thing is like, yeah, you can probably do them, but at the end of the day, you're not 25 anymore. You're 55, you're 65. And so you have to get ready to let go of those things to the next generation. You have to let go of that need to prove yourself physically and what you can do physically and resource wise, and focus on what you can do from a mentoring standpoint and how you can guide the next generation. And I think that gets lost a lot when we look at, and I had this conversation with Sheed. It's not a spoiler. You may play the game at some point, but Final Fantasy 15, me and Sheed were talking about it, and we're looking at the promotional material for the game. And as soon as we found out the main character's dad loves, like the main character Noctis, his Regis, loves his son, but like this guy's gonna die. Sure enough, he died. He died right at the beginning of the game. But it just goes to show that whenever there's good dads, they die. And whenever a good dad, you're expected to give your life. But what if you don't have to? Why is that always that the case? Why do we have to die once we're not able to give as much physically and resource-wise? Isn't there not something to gain from our experience and our knowledge? Let's have a conversation about that. And I think that gets lost a lot for us men. Like, as much as like maybe when you're 25, after you have your surgery, you can still do push-ups, but maybe you not want to go when you're 55.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to say this. So I feel like All Might just becomes a mentor. The way you just explained that, he just becomes a support system for Deku then.
I don't want to answer because then that also leads into a conversation about Might Guy. So I want to.
No, you made it kind of obvious for me.
But there's something that happens too. I don't want to talk. That's how I want to. I don't want to ruin it. But that's part of the conversation I had, and I really found that interesting because, like, to be honest with you, overall, like when I was watching this, I was worried All Might's gonna die.
Yeah.
Because he's losing his power, right? He's gonna die. That's what you're expecting. But it's like, why does that have to be the case? Right?
Well, yeah. So I understand exactly what you're saying, but remember, it wasn't just because he was losing his power. For me, at least. For
sure. It's also this. It was the mythology behind passing on and so on and so forth.
It was that, and the fact that if he was just losing his power, then I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't think he was dying. But it was the fact that he was having the organ issue. Like he was having the stomach issue too. And he was like, and he was coughing out blood, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah, he's
very true.
But
with anime, sorry for jumping in, just a small joke. Coughing up blood in anime is equivalent of having a cold. That's what they do all the time.
Yeah, but I've seen so many animes to the point when they're coughing up blood, then you're gonna find themselves on a bed saying, so anyway, that was in the back of my mind. But okay, let's just make the case that I did say just because he lost his power, I thought he was gonna die. Why do they have to die? That's the question, right? I don't know. I think that in the anime community is just, I see it like, and this doesn't sound bad though. It's like in the anime itself, they need the main character for they have to establish some sort of character development. So, the quickest way to do that is by killing off a parent, whether it's both parents, the mom and the dad, or just the dad and the mom is just there.
Never the mom. I never see it's just the mom. It's rarely just the mom, or the mom dies by an illness.
Yeah, it's rare. Yeah, it's
killed.
very, very,
Always,
very,
yeah.
very right. It's very rare, but it's oftentimes, if it's not just the dad, it's both the parents.
Yes, if it's not, 100%. If it's not just the dad, it's both the parents, or the mom dies of an illness. The mom is never.
Yeah, or the mom. Yeah, exactly. And then the dad's just there telling the stories of how your mom died and whatever.
Exactly.
But I think the thing is this though. It's, of course, the anime logic is the main character. Of course, he has to be a youth because we don't want like a middle-aged man to be the main character. Like,
that was almost the main character for Hero, right? He was almost going to be like 22. Just a fun fact.
Now that's not as bad as a 30 or 40 years old person. No, 40 years old person, because they have to sell. They have to sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have to be relatable. But I think, okay, so it's character development. That's number one, of course, for the main character. That's the quickest way to do it. The second way, I think that if I was to relate this to the real life, like our world here, I think it's because we know as men that our value is tied into what we can do for society. Like, that's whether or not we're competent.
I agree.
So it's like, if he's not going to be strong anymore,
what's the use of him?
What's the use of him?
And I think that's a good conversation point. And I think that's something for us to reflect on as men in terms of.
I'll be honest with you. This is one thing where, to a certain degree, I can agree with it. To a certain degree, you brought up a really good example. You said you're right. You can't do something when you're 50. You can't do 25 years old activities. Now, I can agree with that statement, but I feel like just as a man, we still have to be competent to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
Now, whether or not is this what defines us? Again, it depends on the individual, right?
I think it's about realigning and reinterpreting your competencies. That's the reason why I said more of speaking on your experience as a mentor and as someone with experience, because I can tell you, when my dad had his last major stroke, which is really the one that hit him the hardest, is because he was trying to do too much as like a 65-year-old man. And that's what aggravated his blood vessels. So I've seen this firsthand in terms. Sorry?
Yeah, no, that's I'm sorry to hear that, man.
It's okay. And that's the reason why, like, when you brought up that point, I was like, I think we need to start having these conversations of why would we expect these mentors to die after they've given or after they've fought or whatever it is? Why can't they continue living? Why is that not part of the conversation? Why is that? Why hasn't that been part of the conversation? Right? I think that's something worth talking about. Even in terms of Guilty Gear, my favorite character, Kai, his mentor dies after passing on his weapon to him. Like, why does he have to? Why can't he continue to teach him how to use a weapon and be a guide, right? Like, that's typically the thing. Like, you give and then you die. Why does he have to die right after? Why can't he continue to give in different ways? Why is it so static?
Yeah. So I don't know. The way I see it is like this. I feel like, of course, in life, you need a level of balance, right? So,
Agreed.
For example, your father. This is what I truly believe. This, I believe that as a man, regardless, yes, you're supposed to be a perfect human being, even though we're not. That's what's expected of us, though.
You mean perfect? You mean to be a leader?
Emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
High IQ, high EQ. Like, we're literally, like, the ideal archetype for man is that we're supposed to be perfect, especially if we want to procreate. So that's exactly what society is telling us. But I think, and I believe this, I think fundamentally though, men, we're supposed to acquire value. So we're supposed to
I
be
mean,
a
yeah,
man of value. We're
it's
supposed to acquire
expected.
value. Yeah, it's expected, and I think that that's exactly what we should do. Only because with it, we can raise the next generation to be better than they were before.
Agreed. I would say we're not expected to be perfect. I would say um, we're expected to have or be an ideal for others to strive towards. Similar to what Superman's dad,
It's
Jor-El,
more,
said to
it's
Superman.
more or less the same when you think about it.
Well, perfect implies that you have to be without flaw versus um, ideal is something that you're constantly working towards every day. You may not be the best, you may make mistakes, you may fall, but at least you're going to get up and keep moving towards that thing.
Yeah, but the expectation is there.
And that is a great conversation for
Yeah.
Askeladd and Vinland Saga, to be honest with you. That's why I want to talk about this, the idea of vulnerability in leadership. What does it mean to lead? What does it mean to be to create an ideal for others to follow, for you to strive towards? It's a great conversation, and I'm definitely looking forward to those episodes that we've already kind of hinted at a little bit. You know,
Yeah, no, the this conversation is nice. It's very
absolutely.
deep. Yeah.
Now you see why I was looking forward to doing this. And I'm looking, and I think, like I said, we need to revisit, just this conversation about Deku and Rock Lee, and just, the things that they were able to do and are able to do just from having the right people in their circle of support, right?
Yeah.
Even in terms of, like I said, we were talking about one of my youth and how we're supporting her with her panic attacks. Now she's moving back here to Toronto. This is all because of the resources that she has.
Yeah. It's the world is interesting, man. We men,
Definitely.
the men have to bear a lot of responsibility. We have to bear a
But it's
lot of
worth it.
responsibility. It's not to say that women don't also, because I think that they also bear a lot of responsibility too. But the way, yeah, we have to bear a lot of responsibility.
Agreed.
Yeah.
There's nothing like at a certain point in your life you go Super Saiyan. Like these two characters in the background, Deku and Rock Lee. You're just seeing them like, yo, how? And there's nothing like, as much as I hate, like I said, being called talented or whatever. There's nothing like going Super Saiyan with people around you. If you get what I'm trying to say, people are like, yo, who is this guy? How is he so sick with it?
Yeah.
How do you get to this
Yeah.
point? And you're like, yo, the blood, sweat, and tears. Like when people see Deb and I together, I'm like, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work for us to get to this point.
But you know why? This is why I love, and I already mentioned this, but this is why I love when Sakura says, "Why do you guys keep going? Like, what keeps you guys going?"
Trying to go
And it
Super
just puts
Saiyan,
into
baby
perspective.
girl.
Huh?
I'm trying to go Super Saiyan, baby girl. I'm trying to show everyone I
I'm
can
trying
go
to go,
Super Saiyan.
but it just puts into perspective exactly. Just, I mean, at the fundamental core, the male ego, what it's willing to do, right? So
Absolutely.
it's just when she said that, I was just like, damn, I felt that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I never really thought about it. Like I'll be honest with you, I never thought about why men go so hard.
And also, sorry, another point. I didn't mean to interject, but like, as much as like you were seeing Rock Lee and Deku go Super Saiyan, if they never kept going and they never met All Might and Might Guy,
Yeah.
no one would feel bad for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the hard truth. No one would feel bad for them. Everyone's impressed by where they are now, but even though they have those deficits that make it harder for them to have gotten to where they are now, no one would have felt bad for them if they didn't do it.
Yeah, I agree.
So as much as maybe you don't want to do push-ups right after you had your surgery and your arm is broken, and you can't use your right arm and your right leg, his left arm and his left leg.
Mm-hmm.
No one's gonna feel bad for you in a little bit.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. After a while, people just won't care anymore.
That's the harsh truth.
And that's the sad reality that men have to live with.
Which is why, go on. Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that at the moment we could provide the most value, but the moment we stop, the minute we stop, it's, oh, this guy, he's good for nothing, and He doesn't do anything. You know what? It brings me to another interesting story where you hear about, again, NBA players while they're playing.
NBA players. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have the most respect.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I've realized this behavior with now, of course, I'm not going to speak
I
for
think I
every
know where you're
single-
going with this. Go
Yeah,
on.
exactly. I'm not going to speak for every single fans because, of course, I don't know their opinion on this. But I've seen few people act where when the moment they stop playing, they treat them as, oh, this
Ordinary
guy's
people.
just a old guy, whatever. He's not in the NBA anymore. It doesn't even matter. His opinion doesn't matter anymore. So, for example, whenever you have those commentators of, you know, people who used to play in the past, they're like, well, it doesn't matter. The game changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who are you? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself guilty doing that too. Like, for
Mhm.
example, when I had, I think, who was it? Like, you have like the Baron Davis and those guys just talk about exactly the nature of basketball, where it's going. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. You played like almost 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The game changed.
Recency bias too. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And what I wasn't realized what I was doing is the fact that I was tying their value to what they were providing.
And
this,
so,
yeah.
There's one extra point to add to the NBA point. One of those things. It's a really good point that you said. I'll wrap it up on this, but this is the reason why a lot of NBA players go broke after professional athletes go broke after retirement, because we as men struggle to reinvent ourselves after we pass on, the knowledge of the gates and taijutsu, or one for all. We don't know what to do with ourselves after. We don't know how to reinvent ourselves after that point. And so we go broke. Or in the case of anime, we might as well just die, right? But it's up to us as men to also, as much as we're striving to, in our young days, to become, go Super Saiyan, 100% one for all, or, 7 or 8 gates open, we had to be able to reinvent ourselves after those points when we, I guess for lack of a better word, don't know how to do, aren't able to do those things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important for us to do so, because there's knowledge, there's value in our knowledge, but we have to learn to reinvent ourselves. But yes, this has been a great conversation.
We had really good debates, man. It was good.
Absolutely.
A lot of passionate debates.
Yeah, yo, I feel so strongly about these two characters, which is why you see me like, yo, what'd you say about him? Because I really feel very strongly about these two characters. They've had such a big impact on me to make me like get emotional. I don't get it. You see me, you were at my wedding. I didn't cry. Like, people were like, oh, you're gonna cry. I didn't cry. And
that's exactly what I said. I said, what's the character name? Erwin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, remember what I told you through text? I said, so you didn't cry at the wedding, but you cried when Erwin's last battle call. Like, this guy.
Yeah. So to give you perspective on that,
tell this listener what.
Yeah, I'll give you perspective on why that had such a big impact on me, and then we'll end it here. So you remember Erwin's speech? He was talking about the dead and how we give meaning to the dead.
Yeah.
My dad's sick. He's not like he's a dependent now. And so he's not able-bodied and able to do things on his own. So when Erwin was giving his speech about the living, for me, it's like, what are you doing, Ibera, to honor your dad's life? To show that his meaning had value. His life had meaning and value. And so that's what the speech had to be. Like, literally, like, Deb and I were watching this scene. Deb was like, this is the scene? And I literally just turned to her and I said, Dad. And then she immediately got it. She knew exactly why that scene had such a big impact on me. It's because it was him talking about, yes, the world is cruel. Yes, these people have died, but they died for us. And the way we give their life meaning is by what we do in our lives and how we make use of our life. And I'm like, yo, that hit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, maybe at some point.
I really like the quote, and also it was what I like about it the most is the fact that he never hid the truth. He just said, listen, we're gonna do this, and you guys are gonna die.
Yeah.
So
that might be a good way of us comparing Askeladd and Erwin. We'll see how that looks like.
It's very good. It depends. Again, it depends on the situation, right? It depends. In certain case, that may be actually poor leadership, even despite the fact that it's being extremely honest. But in that case, you just had no way out. So you just had to do what you had to do.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Yeah, so I guess it just depends on the setting situation.
Facts. That would be a good. Yeah, I guess we'll compare and contrast Askeladd and Irwin in our episode about Vinland Saga. Season 2 is coming out, I think, March 2023.
Okay.
Mappa out here overworking their animators, so looking forward to that. Not them overworking their animators. They definitely need to get paid more. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Jordan, if you have any lasting comment, any last words you want to add for this?
No, I'm looking forward to the next debate.
This guy calls it debate. It's conversation. Conversation.
I like to call it debate because it's passionate.
Yeah, no. Our next episode is on Mob Psycho and another episode on Dragon Ball Z and fatherhood are definitely ones I'm looking forward to. Dragon Ball will be probably more of a debate one, if anything, because we're also going to be talking about who's the best dad in Dragon Ball, which is Piccolo.
100% Vegeta.
I was thinking Vegeta as well.
Oh, I guess I'm going to say Piccolo then. Well. I'm going to say Piccolo then.
What? This guy just disagreeing with me. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. We're out.
All right, later.
If you enjoyed this nerd therapy session, check out some of our other videos. And if you want to hear more of our whole interview, check out the Black Nerd Talks podcast.